Good morning, church family, fellow heathens and atheists and Christians and Hindus and spiritualists and crystal worshipers. How y'all doing this morning? I just wanted to come on and talk about beliefs. Been talking about that quite a bit with folks, and asked to do some stuff this morning to bring it to you. I think somebody wants to join and talk about it. So we'll see if they come through. A lot of people have been saying they'll come through, and one thing leads to another, and they're not able to come through. Like yesterday, I was going to have a debate with Dave A. Pandeist, and I think maybe some miscommunication or something happened. But he's going to join us next week to actually talk about all of that. What's up, Sammy? How you doing? How you doing? We're gonna need you to come through though, man, so we can do some DMT and stuff, man. You down? You scared? You gonna do it? Come on now. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. So I was gonna talk a little bit about beliefs and what people believe, and more importantly, why they believe it. I was always kind of interested in this thing called epistemology, which is the reason people say they believe what they believe or know what they know. And I always found that kind of intriguing. It's actually very psychological. And so there's actually a psychology of beliefs. And so, kind of what I wanted to share is some information I have learned over the years about that. Um, you know, the really big question for me is like, can information really change people's perspectives? And what would it take for that to happen, right? So, I believe that being, inspiring a positive belief, a purpose driven or long lasting change is beneficial. Um, so like through positive, authentic, inspirational communication, you can sort of break down barriers and believe it. We need it because we live in a era now where everything's social media. Everybody's a keyboard warrior, and everybody's a contrarian. And so, what I just want to do is explore how beliefs are formed and how, as content creators like myself, how I can maybe influence people in a positive way, you know. So, if you look at it like from politics to issues like climate change, there are a lot of issues that provoke a lot of strong opinions. And these are beliefs that are fiercely attacked and defended, both ends of the spectrum. And the world is full of opinions that's going to run contrary to our own beliefs, whatever that might be. And so we may find ourselves screaming in frustration, like, how can someone actually believe that shit? Or we can say, why do you take this shit so serious? Or why don't you take this shit so serious? And so, while everyone's entitled to their own opinion, the fact is that we as human beings, we still want people to change their mind, especially on crucial issues that we think are important, like climate change, like getting Trump out of office or getting Trump into office, or getting people to accept Christianity or leave Christianity, be an atheist, or whatever your thing is. People want to change people's minds on these things, and they may not even be aware that they do. So this kind of goes back to the psychology of belief. So, like, why do people believe what they believe? And then how can we challenge them, right? So the one thing I've kind of understood is that beliefs are powerful and they're actually necessary. And this is both to individuals and to society. So beliefs, they sort of offer like a framework that governs our thoughts, our actions, our attitudes at every level, from believing that hard work's going to bring success, or to believing that obeying rules is the right thing to do, or we should always fight against authority. You know, our beliefs are built on complex factors, We believe some things because we observe like patterns of experience. Like if I drop this pin on the ground, I believe that it's going to fall downward because it's just my experience. And some things, though, we believe because of a trusted source tells us. Like we believe gravity pulls the stone to the earth because the science textbooks I've always read actually says so. And some people believe things despite logic or despite the evidence to the contrary. And this is because our brains sometimes take facts and we tend to fit them to reinforce a belief we hold already, kind of like an ad hoc rationalization of things. So the strength of these beliefs are often like kind of decided by our emotions that can be deeply held, within us. Like maybe we got it from since we were kids. And they also extend out though to our social interactions. We're like herd animals. We seek the company of like-minded people, and this further reinforces our convictions, and it creates this echo chamber that we do. I mean, I'm not even going to lie to you. Like I do this channel so I can find like-minded people, you know? And that's the thing. I do this because I want to find like-minded people, and we can share these sort of understandings and beliefs. And everyone has beliefs. It's good for us to have beliefs. Um, they give us like grounding for our value systems and things like that. So we'd forgive you for thinking that beliefs that run contrary to logic or evidence should be easy to change, right? So surely you simply present the proof of climate change, for example, and deniers will see the error of their ways. You think that's really going to happen? Sadly, it doesn't really work that way. People don't respond to facts the way you may think they do. Beliefs are deeply held, and there's an emotional commitment. In your brain, this little computer up here is programmed to protect those beliefs. So when a belief, even if it's irrational and you challenge it, areas of your brain, like the what is it, the amygdala, that little reptilian part of your brain, the real ancient part of your brain, the crocodile brain, or as we said it in sales, the reptilian brain, it kicks in to defend it. So we're really inclined to avoid and ignore anything that threatens our beliefs. And that's the first thing you have to understand when you talk to people. People are naturally going to defend their beliefs before they listen to you to take in the facts you want to present. And this is why they surround themselves with like minded people. That's why we do that. And it seems that, the bigger and more important the belief is, the more deeply and strongly it's going to be held, and the harder it will be to actually change that belief. Now, all that being said, we still all try to change people's minds and beliefs if we think it can be changed. One school of thought is to step back and not try to argue or convince anyone. There's an old adage, right, that says like, how's it go? How many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? To which the answer is none. The light bulb has to want to change itself, you know? So the reality is that you can't force someone to believe something that they don't want to. So forcing your opinion on somebody is only going to put their brain into that reptilian mode, make them more resistant to changing their belief. So instead of criticizing and condemning people, it's probably a better approach to kind of be respectful and try to understand why someone might hold their beliefs and kind of get into their worldview. Like if you were watching the show yesterday, I spoke to both Caleb and I spoke to Greg Rogers, who's a Christian. And I have a few, I'm not really sure where me and Caleb disagree, really. I think we're probably on the same page about most things. I can't imagine where we're different. Um, maybe I lean more towards an idealistic notion of reality, but he kind of seemed, when pressed, it seems like we agree. If I ask, the key questions that kind of sway me, he seems to agree. So I don't know if Caleb necessarily falls into that, but I know Greg Rogers, he was talking about, the devil creates evolution and a lot of things that I find kind of absurd. But I didn't, and a lot of people ask me, like, watching the show, they're like, why didn't you kick back on a lot of that ridiculous? You just kind of like went along with it. It's like, because that's not really going to do anything. My approach is to be respectful and kind of go into their worldview with them and pose questions that allow them to reflect on their position and give them a lot of space to change their mind. Don't just corner them. Just ask simple questions. Don't ask the hard questions right off the bat. Just present information simply and clearly and non-judgmentally, and most importantly, keep it positive and inspiring. Tell them where it makes sense. Lead with something positive when you speak to people, because positivity can really help to change people's beliefs. Like, many people are scared to change their mind, especially on like big issues like climate change or Christianity or politics. And they might be kind of embarrassed to admit when they're wrong. So they're being afraid of the ostracism from their like-minded peers. So, they're not going to just roll over for you. And I have to understand that every step of the way. And believe me, Greg was using that same approach with us. Like, he was very respectful, telling us that, everybody says things that are truth. You're speaking truth, man. And he was kind of like being very generous in that way. So presenting your alternative opinion with positivity tends to help overcome barriers. So, you just want to be a positive person to speak to. Make it feel good to speak to you. You know, as they say, you attract more bees with honey than with vinegar, and that's always the thing, it's always the thing. So, Caleb, it's great to find like-minded people. The issue is when we just stay in our echo chambers and stop critical thinking about our beliefs. Exactly, man. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I just understand that it's hard finding anyone you're going to agree with 100% anyway, so I just don't get into it. I like to hang out with people who can agree and disagree. Kudos, Sammy. Kudos. I'm the same damn way, man. I don't like people that agree with me all the time, man. Because you know what? If two people are in a room and they agree on everything, somebody's lying. Somebody's telling a lie. And I don't really appreciate people that lie to me. I don't even care if it's to make me feel good or whatever. Like, just be yourself, man. I'm a big boy. I got big shoes. If you step on my feet, it ain't gonna hurt me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not really tied up. I'm not identified with my beliefs at all. Like, I'm mainly proud to say I'm agnostic on everything, just about, except the fact that, you know, I exist and I'm conscious of it. That's the only thing I know. Anything else is just built on that fact. You know what I'm saying? That's it. And if you disagree, cool. We can be best of friends. I disagree with everybody, all of my friends, just about. And Caleb said, I wanted to push back on Ben, but in a respectful way. I hope I did that yesterday. Yeah, you mean with Greg? Yeah. You did push back, and you did it in a respectful way, and he pushed back on us, and he did it with respect. And we, the main thing is we gave our audience, people that were watching, and people that will go back and review the video, they're going to see like the arguments from both sides, and they make their own mind up. Hopefully that's how it works. But like I said, there's psychology to this stuff. That's why I like you, man. Yeah, I like you too, Sammy. And I've never even met you. That's why we have to get together this, definitely this spring or this summer. I'm up to it. I'm open to it. So you just let me know because it sounds like you're not that far away. Greg, my apologies. Yeah, that's who he is, Greg Rogers. We had a debate a couple years ago, kind of on the same sort of topics like naturalism versus God, and I kind of cloaked my position in the form of pantheism, so it would be a striking sort of debate. It's one thing to be like, well, I'm an atheist and I deny your God. I don't believe it because of no evidence. Like that's been beaten to death. Like that old Matt Dillahunty sort of approach, right? So I wanted to say, I'm looking at the universe as the God that you're talking about. And let's compare. Let's, do this sort of direct comparison. That way we can really point out the issues. Like, my God can do everything your God can. It's just that you're special pleading for your God or whatever, right? And a lot of what goes into these sort of, um, you know, beliefs are presuppositions. But, first of all, what I mean by belief is like an acceptance of a statement. Is it true or is it something that exists? Or is it something that is real or is it both? Right? Though that's what I mean by belief. Do you understand it to be real? Is the claim matching what you know about the facts? That's pretty much what I mean by that. And so a lot of what goes into what people actually believe is what we call like presuppositions. So I don't know if anyone's ever dealt with there's apologists who do presupposition prepup presuppositional apologetics. And what they do is they just assume it's sort of like circular reasoning. It's like they assume the God is real, for example, and then their conclusion is therefore God exists. So it's not very convincing, but really everyone has some sort of presupposition for something that they believe in, right? But see, for me, not everybody, because for me, the only like I would debate someone on this. Some people say, well, Scott, you have presuppositions too. You are an idealist or you believe whatever it is you do, the no God or the God or whatever my belief may or may not be, right? And they'll say, you're basing this on your presupposition, just like anybody else. And my only basis for this stuff is that I'm conscious and aware of existing in reality. And people say, well, yeah, well, that's your presupposition. You're presupposing it. And I argue that that's not a presupposition. That's just an experiential reality. Because think about it. If I don't exist, then I couldn't talk about anything. Like if I don't think, therefore I am, then you can't argue for or against anything. That's like the foundation. So that's my starting point. Other people are like, well, the starting point is God, you know, God is the starting point. You can't know what's right or wrong or what's true and false or what's possible or impossible if it's not for God, because God is the fundamental basis, absolute referent. This is what Greg was saying yesterday. God is that referent. He is that thing. So you have to start with God. Otherwise, everything doesn't make sense. And we didn't really get that far with it. I was going to kind of challenge it, but I kind of know what's coming when you deal with a lot of people that talk about presuppositions. They'll say, well, if you don't start with God, then what do you start with? You start with nature. And what is our best understanding of the natural world? It's evolution, right? But if you believe in evolution, and evolution is defined as blind chance, random mutations over time, then what you're basically saying is all of your thoughts are the product of blind processes. And if your thoughts are the product of blind processes, then how do you know it's true? You're kind of like, if you're debating somebody about the truth of God, it's kind of like you've got a Sprite can and you've got a Coke can. You shake them up and you open it up, and they both just fizz out brain chemistry. So, which fizzing can is fizzing truth, and which can is fizzing falsehood? That's their argument. You're the same way. You're just a batch of chemicals randomly getting together to create a brain or whatever. And so, how can you get truth from blind processes like that? Whereas I, on the other hand, I have God, who's an intentional God, an intelligent God. That worldview is grounded in something that's defined as rational, in the basis of logic. Whereas you're grounding your truth claims in brain chemistry, random blind processes. So, out of these two competing views, which belief do you think would be more possible to be true? So that's the presuppositional argument. They'll say, the naturalist presumes, he presupposes evolution. Blind chance is his presupposition. The theist presumes an intelligent, loving, personal God. It has more oomph to it. I can speak confidently about my beliefs because they're grounded in God. And your truth claims are grounded in blindness. Because blindness is a put down word, like Alan Watts said. The naturalist, he likes to say that the result of the universe is just blind processes. Your thinking is the product of just brain. That's a put down word. Saying blindness and all of that. And see, the Christians understand that language as a put down language, and they exploit it for their argument. Caleb says, I don't believe theists can escape it that easily. They are in the same boat as the atheist. The theist is assuming their God is a good God that is looking out for them. But what if that's not the case? Exactly. That's why I wanted to let Greg get everything out yesterday. And then I asked that question, like, how do you know you're not being deceived by a false God that's pretending to be the true God? How do you know that? You're just reading the Bible. Is it possible that you could be misled? And then the outsider test of faith to kind of illustrate that, like a Muslim or a Hindu. Is it possible that they're not worshiping the true God, even if it comes from their book, and they have the same feelings that you do? Could they be wrong? And of course, he said yes. Well, if they can be wrong, could you be that same person? And if not, how would you know? What tests can we do to conclude that? It goes right back to, you can turn it right back on them. You know what I mean? I apologize then if I got us off track. No, you were good. I was I was telling Sophia, because she was kind of seeing the video back, and I was like, yeah, I was kind of like trying to address Caleb on some things in the middle and then get back to what Greg. It's never easy, because it really wasn't like a structured debate or anything. It was just like an open conversation. So we had to kind of like, out of respect, kind of like accept his, framework so that we could deal with it. We could easily say, well, I just don't accept your framework and dismiss it. And then that's the end of the conversation. But what I like to do to extend the conversation out and make it more interesting is just kind of accept what you're saying, and let's explore it within it itself and see if there's any sort of contradictions, even within the framework itself. rather than just shit on the framework altogether. You know what I mean? Like I used to do it that way back when I was a big time debater or whatever. I used to just shit on people's framework. Like, well, I reject your frame, but then you understand there's nothing really to talk about at that point, you know, because anybody can reject anything. And then you can talk about why you reject the framework. And that's like an extrinsic or an external critique. And we can do it that way. But I think it's more powerful when you do internal critiques because that way you have less hurdles to go through. Like if someone's, for example, if someone's belief is that Jesus was raised from the dead, or no, even better, God hates sin, God is love, right? That's their belief. And they also believe the Bible is true. Everything in the Bible is true. So, as an internal critique, you can say, okay, if God is love, then what about the time God did, you know, promoted slavery or allowed slavery? Or what about when God killed the innocent, you know, commanded his people, the Israelites, to kill every man, woman, child, and animal of the Amalekites? Was that loving? What about Noah's flood story? What about how he drowned innocent babies? How does that coincide with love? Or if he hates sin, like you said, he hates sin, and the same God is all powerful, all loving, and all knowing, then why did he create anything at all? If he knew that he couldn't help but give people free will, and he knew ahead of time that they would use this free will to do sin, yet he hates sin, and he's all powerful, then why couldn't God create a world where there's no sin and yet everything is in perfect balance anyways? It goes back kind of like to the fine tuning issue. You know, oh yeah, and the firstborn of every Egyptian. Yeah, great example. The Bible is laden with examples of weird stuff like that. Like the fine tuning, like, yeah, you know, there's this fine tuning of the universe that if you move any of these constants, even by a hair, it will dissolve the universe from existing. You know, if you tweak gravity a certain way, it'll collapse in on itself. If or you know, or if you tweak it another way, you know, it'll won't even exist, or life wouldn't be possible, or a number of things. But it's just right for life. It's just right for the universe. Where we see, you know, this anthropic principle argument. But the thing is, if God is a miracle doer, then who fine tuned God to create the universe exactly the way he did? Right? Like, who made God have to make the universe the way he did and not some other way? You know, it seems like the fine tuning argument supports naturalism more than it supports supernaturalism or miracles and stuff. Because it seems like if God could create a universe with life in it, despite the fact that it's not fine tuned for life, then that would be a miracle. That would be proof of God if he did it despite the fact that the universe was not fine tuned. But the fact that it is exactly where it needs to be for it to be the way it is only sort of says that, you know, the puddle exists as a puddle because it has all the things that puddles need to be puddles. And it's like the puddle of water saying to itself, wow, man, this shape is just made just right for me to be the way I am as a puddle of water. Isn't it kind of what a coincidence? This puddle is round, and this puddle has indentions and water, and it rained and there's water in it, and I'm here. And if all that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here. What a miracle. Like, no, that's not a miracle. That's just, you're just the product of what happened in nature. right? Now, if you're a puddle, despite the fact that there's no hole and no, that would be a miracle because that's counter logical. That's counter to what we understand the universe to be, which is a very coherent sort of thing. And so some Christians would say, hey, the fact that there are patterns and regularities in nature and that we can do math to describe all of this stuff in very close detail and high resolution, and we can create technology based on this pattern of regularities that we experience in the world. That's proof of a smart, intelligent God who put all this stuff together in the first place. But how do we know that we aren't just emergent from this same universe? And that's why it makes sense for us. It's because we have this, you know, mind. We're a little different than rocks and other things that just, have no volition over their own course. They can't change their own course of action. They're not observers, but we are observers. So we have this ingredient called consciousness and higher meta consciousness as well that gives us the ability to track all of these patterns and regularities and then exploit them. We can decide what is advantageous to us. And so we can do all that. That's the naturalistic story. That's my story that I think makes more sense. But why do I take that story over the other story? Could it be that I'm biased? You know, some people believe that, some people base their beliefs on emotion and what they want to believe. And they've even come out and said that. Many people have. And then many people who've changed their mind had admitted to that. But then other people base their beliefs on this is just their understanding. This is their rational conclusion. Maybe they don't have all the data, or maybe they're, just kind of ignorant of a lot of things. And so their best theory would support Thor as creating lightning. At the time that these things were popular in ancient Greece or whatever, Thor was a pretty reasonable conclusion because they didn't know anything about physics and how that worked, how lightning works. But once you have all the data, then you can start believing things based on that data. But if you still don't, it means that what's driving you is some emotion. Caleb says, this also gets into my belief of necessaritarianism that I brought up yesterday, right? That it's possible things couldn't have happened any other way, which we could get into in a future discussion. Yeah, we could do that. It sounds like hard determinism, and that's fine. I don't know if I have an opinion on that either way, because in a way, like for me, I am a sort of determinist, but I'm sort of a compatibilist in a sense, because what it is I think that we are a product of our context and priors, obviously, right? And like if you were to like 2 years ago, I made a decision I may regret, right? And sometimes I say to myself, if I could only go back 2 years ago, I would make a totally different decision. No, I don't think I would. Like, why would I? I would be that same person that made that decision 2 years ago. And it was a free will choice because I was doing what I wanted to do. So I was free in that sense that I was able to do what I want to do without any sort of coercion from externally. No one put a gun to my head. And even if they did put a gun to your head, you're doing what you want to do again because you don't want to get shot or whatever. So you're sort of enslaved to your wants, and your wants are the product of your genes, your how you were raised, a lot of things. Even if I say, I'm going to go in this kitchen and I'm not going to touch the donuts today, I'm going to eat a piece of fruit. So I'm not going to do what I want to do. Well, actually, I am doing what I want to do. It's just that I'm prioritizing my wants. So it's a little more complex than that. And so in that way, I'm a determinist, and I don't know if that's any different than what you believe, Caleb, or not. I'm not really sure about that. I know that um, with this thing called super determinism, which is this scientific kind of quantum mechanical thing, it's a little different. You're talking about hidden variables that could be causing what we think is randomness when it's not randomness. It's just determined even on a deeper level. And I think we have evidence that that's not the case. But I love it when people like Sabina Hossenfelder um, explores the different alternatives, because that's science thinking, that's scientific thinking. It's saying, you know what? Let's challenge the consensus. Let's challenge it. Let's see if we can find any problem. There's nothing wrong with that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Caleb says the free will is definitely an interesting discussion, but ultimately unimportant. Regardless where you fall on the question, you're going to make choices you're going to make. Exactly. It's not that important. It seems to be important to a lot of theist and libertarian free will people, because they think that if you don't subscribe to free will, libertarian free will, then you're going to be free to do whatever you want. You'll rape and pillage all you want. And I like that Penn Jillette statement that says, you know, the great thing is that I'm free to rape and pillage all I rape and yeah, he says I rape and I murder all the people I want now, which is none. So it doesn't change a thing, like you said, Caleb. The people are going to do what they want to do, and they will always use ad hoc rationalization to make a story about why they did what they wanted to do. And they'll just say, "Well, I did it because of X, Y, and Z." Really, they did it because they wanted to. We're all enslaved to our wants at the end of the day. We just create these stories that support the action, the behavior. That's my opinion. And it's based on what I've learned by reading a lot of psychology and things like that, you know. But we can talk about free will. I like the discussion. I even had a debate about free will with a Christian once. I think one of my first beliefs, first debates, what I'm talking about. One of the first debates I ever did publicly was with a Christian about free will. So, yeah, I'm definitely aware of all the different arguments for it, you know. And anyways, I'm going to put up a invite code in case someone wants to jump in. Sammy says, sorry if my comments are delayed. I'm driving. Well, I appreciate you tuning in. Don't get into a car wreck on my damn behalf, though. You put your safety first, Sammy. Don't, please. All right. Yeah, Caleb, what's going on, my brother?
Hey. So,
Right.
yeah, I was trying to think of the things where it's like, yeah, we agree on a whole lot of things, but I'm trying to think of, like, I say the major, I guess, points of where we start to veer off is probably where I probably think most likely that consciousness is not fundamental, and you do,
Right.
and then I don't know if we have divergent opinions on quantum mechanics or not. That's a whole other can of worms. But
Yeah. I know. Quantum mechanics is kind of a deep topic, anyways, and it's really all mathematical. You know, like probably my bottom line about quantum mechanics is it's an abstraction, but it's useful. It's very successful as a theory, so it extrapolates out into reality in that sense. But what it really is always metaphysics, like what things are, like the ontology. And so ultimately we're all kind of agnostic at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I guess the only difference we have is I'll lean towards consciousness while I don't know if you lean towards materialism or not. I don't know where you stand on that. Maybe you lean towards I don't know either way. Maybe you're just kind of stuck in that one
Well, well, I
position.
mean,
I don't know.
I would say it's there's sort of a hodgepodge of like where it's like, so there's some stuff in idealism that makes a whole lot of sense, and then there's a bunch, so there's stuff that in materialism that makes a bunch of sense, and it's like, so yeah, you could say I'm cherry picking, but I'd say
Yeah.
everyone does cherry picking.
Yeah, we do. I know. And like, yeah, materialism definitely makes sense. Like, there's an idealist, what Bernardo Kastrup and David Chalmers and people like that, and they all both say, well, we're materialists at heart. And what that means is they're saying that, basically emotionally, I'm kind of committed to materialism because they're both like into science and philosophy. So they're like, and you can't deny like every major advancement is because of materialistic science. What has idealism ever produced? Nothing. Maybe introspective progress, but I think that's only because they're two different things. They're trying to address different issues.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
if you
real
were,
easy. Yeah, it's real easy to say materialism is superior, for that reason. But
and I'm just, well, I mean, if you were a hard idealist, I don't think you'd be able to admit that. You'd be
right,
too deep in the camp.
yeah,
Just
and
like the hard materials, they don't question their beliefs.
right, and a lot of their like really, if you take like some, and I'm not saying this is necessary, but some materialists, and again, how are we even defining materialists? But I think I saw an idealist, Bernardo Kastrup, debate with this illusionist, always or Blackwell, I think is her last name. I have to look that up. But basically, she's an illusionist. So her whole thing is, well, consciousness isn't really real. It's just we think it is. And then Bernardo's point was, well, why would that's at least you're consistent, like you understand. And she goes, yeah, I mean, the idealist has a point that there is no evidence for consciousness. There is no explanation for consciousness. There's no theory for it. And until there is, then why should it be considered scientific? Like, why should it be considered anything scientific or measurable? And she goes, and if you're going to be consistent even further, then you would say, well, at me as a scientist, then it's not worth even considering. It's really not worth it. Like, it's like God. It's like saying, well, God created the universe. I can't prove it. I can't measure the God. You can't see the God. You can never observe. It's just a story people tell. And the scientist says, yeah, well, you might be able to explain things on a philosophical level, but for a scientist, what use is that belief? Like, what, you're not giving us anything to work with. Like, that doesn't do anything. And if that's the case, then why should we even consider it real? It doesn't, and he says, and it's the same thing with your consciousness stuff. Like, who cares? It doesn't do anything. And in that case, but then, Bernardo's like, yeah, but you couldn't even think that statement up. You couldn't even understand what you're saying right now if you weren't conscious. And she's like, yeah, I know that's the problem. I mean, that's called the hard problem of consciousness. We're trying to figure that out. But why are you trying to figure out something that you admit doesn't exist? Do you do this about God? Do you try to figure out, well, there's a hard problem of God. We're trying to figure out, why can't we prove God that we know exists? Yet we know it doesn't exist. It's like, it doesn't really add up.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing about it that kind of stumps me. But on the other hand, like you said, Caleb, that kind of also depends on what you mean by materialist. No one's maybe you're a materialist and you're not really saying what material is. Maybe you're saying, I'm not necessarily saying consciousness doesn't exist. I'm just saying that we don't know. But as far as we know, everything that's ever has been explained has always been explained by using the method of materialism, methodological materialism. And that's why that kind of pushes me to say that consciousness actually doesn't exist as far as I know. I would admit with the materialists that, but I would say it's real. So that's kind of like where I differ from the materialists. I can say just because something isn't material doesn't mean it isn't real.
Yeah.
And I'll agree that it doesn't exist,
Well, I'd say you have a good way of thinking when it comes to, it's like the only thing I really know is I think therefore I am, and then everything else is different degrees of agnosticism. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like I'm a determinist, but it's like I don't know if that's actually true. Like you said, it's like there's this, there's quantum mechanics where it's like if it's true that is indeterministic, it's like, well, does that can that reconcile with my determinism? And if it can't, well, then I need to let go of my determinism. But at the same time, it's like, so if the where I still stick with determinism is the fact that it seems like science hasn't figured everything out yet when it comes to that, because it's like if it was indeterministic all the way down, then to me it's like, well, how would we even get a universe like the one we see today? It's like it would just be chaos. But it's like, so to me it's like there's, at a certain point, the universe is deterministic, even though at the very lowest of levels it's indeterministic. So it's like, to me, there's missing data there that like brings it all together. If you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying, and that's exactly, I think, the motivation for the super determinism sort of thing. It's like just saying it's random seems unsatisfying. Like there's something about that. Like, why should random processes lead to order and then thermodynamics and all the things that happen? Like, why should it ever get to pockets of order, within a huge, practically infinite universe? Why should this randomness somehow congeal into this orderly system? And even to the point of where we have conscious creatures that can even talk about it. Like, so what they do is they'll say, well, it just seems random from our point of view because we're limited and we only see so much of what's going on. So what seems random is actually determined. But then, a lot of dualists, like religious people, will agree, and they'll say exactly that's our whole point about God. God is that hidden variable you're looking for. Just we're both on the same footing. Like, we can't see it, but we know it's real. And this is what I call God, and it's what you just call the hidden variable. And where I'm saying is, like, I don't think we have any evidence to show the God or the hidden variable either way. I think that entanglement in non-locality sort of just fixes the issue naturally.
Well, to me, it's like, at least from my understanding of the whole probability, and then it becomes non-probable once once there's an observation. Like, to me, it's like, all right, so to me, if there's not really an issue with saying, all right, so it's indeterministic at the quantum level, but deterministic at the higher level, is that it's like, all right, so there's this probability of the wave function, but then once there's an observation, it's deterministic. And so it's like, all right, well, part of, if we're considering an interaction as an observation, it's like, well, particles are interacting with each other all the time. So it's like, to me, it's like, well, there's constantly going to be these deterministic outcomes.
Yeah, I think I understand what you mean. Like, I was reading something on vector spaces the other day, and it's kind of like, this photon, like the wave particle duality, right? Like, they say it travels through space as a wave at the speed of light. But then when it interacts with like an electron, it collapses into a photon particle, right? And so they say the observation or the interaction itself causes that photon to come into existence. And I think what really happens is as it's moving, the vectors, which are like the position that it is in space relative to everything else, all those vector spaces, they simply update. Every time it makes a jump, a quantum jump into a different position, the vectors update themselves. And then if an observation comes along, like somebody uses an electron microscope or something, then it takes a snapshot of that wave where it is, and it presents itself as a photon. It says, well, in this particular vector space, it's a photon right here. In another vector space, it will be something else. It just depends on where you're at when you would make the observation. So it's kind of like that's determination. That's determining shit. Like at first, it's the wave. It's just, it could be anything. But once you either shine a light on it or interact with it with like an electron or something, then it snaps into place. It collapses into a position and appears to us as a photon or a particle or a wave or whatever the case is, like the double slit experiment, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just real interesting shit. And I mean, it's like the metaphysics is, well, there's actually a God who's back there making all that stuff happen. He's kind of pulling the strings on that. Or if you don't like the term God, it's a hidden variable. It's some sort of mysterious, thing out there. And then some people just say, no, it's the universal wave function. That's just the nature of the beingness of the universe. The whole universe is just a probability, like a kind of like a mind that houses all possible behaviors it can make. And then once an excitation happens, then you get this interaction, which is all based on that, like I said, that observation or whatever. So it just, I don't know. I guess it really just kind of depends on your philosophical mood about this shit. And I try not to be too one way or the other. I always I hope I'm more like objective, and I just lean a certain way for these reasons. But I'm always willing to change my mind. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Whatever it is, it's resulting in the same thing anyways.
Well, I mean, I'd say you're doing a good job if you're already aware of your own biases when having these sorts of discussions.
Why do you think people don't do that? Like, why do you think people love echo chambers and stuff?
I want to say, like, on an individualistic level, people can be pretty smart. It's just when we start to just group up, it's like, and I know that can also sound counterintuitive because it's like that's what the whole science enterprise is: people getting together and making progress. But it's like that's just a scientific enterprise. It's like, I'd say, which it's like where, and that's only been around since Galileo's time. It's like where we finally solidified a scientific method, and it became what it is today. But it's like, on the whole, it's like, we get together and we come up with crazy ideas, and then we just run with them. Like, we like with religious thinking, not to bash on religion, but it's like the first thing that comes to mind is witch burnings, or thinking that women are agents of the devil, and so we have to kill them. It's like, well,
yeah. Well, like the one yesterday threw me for a loop. I didn't even jump on it because it was just too, I didn't even know what to say. It was when Greg said, well, because you had mentioned, yeah, but how do you explain the suffering of animals? Like the humans you can understand, but what about the needless suffering of animal? Like, what's the justification for that? And you said, like, evolution is full of suffering and tooth and claw story of how things come up. and that results in a lot of extinction and
Yes.
death and everything. And so he was like saying, well, I believe the devil created the evolution. Like,
I,
like, how do you falsify that? Like,
you know, you
how do
can.
you how do you even challenge that? Like, I don't even know what to say at that point. Like, okay, well, first of all, we have to prove that the devil exists and the God exists, and like,
Yeah.
it's such a long, it's such a long story to just unpack.
It's
That's why you want to get down to the basics. Like, you don't want to get in the weeds with them because it's so convoluted, man.
well, that's the thing where like it seemed like Greg does value Occam's razor, so it's like with the things when it comes to perfection and the whole God knows everything, but you have free will. It's like, and then but his solutions to these, while they could end up making sense in the long run, it's like you had to come to these solutions in a very convoluted way. It's like, couldn't you, like, I'm just giving you easier pathways of, like, maybe he just isn't omniscient, maybe he's not perfect. Like, to me
Right.
that's simpler explanation. But
Yeah. 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 Because he says God was unconscious and just a natural being, or like I guess kind of like a possibility wave, like we were talking about. And then
yeah,
somehow this thing decided he wanted to know himself, or he became God and then decided he wanted to know himself after becoming God. Like,
on an unconscious level, I
yeah,
think that's
it's
what he said.
right. It's like, how does an unconscious thing want anything or do anything? Like, I don't know. Like, it seems like consciousness sort of entails volition and wants and stuff. But that may be wrong. I mean, some people say that, single celled amoebas want to survive, but maybe they're not fully conscious, or they're just they act intelligently. But if we consider to be consistent, if we consider things that are conscious to be things that react to the world around them and themselves, and kind of map themselves out in time and space in order to do that successfully, it seems like there has to be some form of awareness, and that form of awareness would be consciousness. It just may not necessarily be meta conscious, like well, I don't know. What do you think?
But
Self awareness? It seems like, what is self awareness? Isn't that
yeah.
a reflection that you're in time and space and you need to react? I don't know.
Yeah, I know most scientists usually save self-awareness for humans and say that it's that there's certain other animals that seem to have different levels of self-awareness. But I'm trying to
Hmm.
think of, like, I might have to Google that one.
I'm googling it right now.
Yeah.
Are cells self aware? Well, I don't like AI because it doesn't go to your because all of the scientific papers are paywalled off,
Yeah.
and so AI is not going to get that information.
It's
But I do have, though, um, fortunately, NIH, which is the National Library of Medicine,
okay.
access. So let's see what it says here. It says, I don't want to read the whole thing, but I'll go down to the conclusion of the papers.
Yeah. That usually gives a nice summary.
Yeah, just that's all we really need. It says, as far as we know, consciousness requires multicellularity and a fairly complex nervous system. As yet, there is no evidence for consciousness in prokaryotes, sponges, plants, or fungi. Rather than being simple machines, living organisms have evolved through natural selection as complex systems that respond adaptively to their environments via their genetic and epigenetic programming. According to the dominant view to which we adhere, such adaptive behavior can either be conscious or non-conscious, depending on the presence or absence of a nervous system and a brain threshold of complexity, but we see that this isn't the case. In contrast, the CBC theory claims that all cells are sentient and volitional, and that this capability of making conscious decisions is tested and confirms why they adapt to what does it say, to novel situation. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I mean, I guess I don't know. Some scientists maybe think they are conscious, and
Yeah,
that,
yeah. I appreciate that they're like, so this is what the consensus is, but there's also these
yeah,
other theories. Yeah.
right, exactly. And it's growing over time. Like, you can kind of track a trajectory. Like, whereas at first, I think if you want to go back all the way 100 years ago, consciousness wasn't even considered in any of these sort of things, and it was just mainly evolution. Like, and I think I was talking about at the beginning, people talk about blind evolution. It's this dichotomy. It's like either it's God explains, these arguments. Like, you can't make a truth claim if you're just blind chance, because you're like a Coke can fizzing.
Mhm.
Which Coke can is fizzing truth?
Yeah.
Like, that
Which,
doesn't make right.
which,
But maybe that's a misrepresentation now of what the
right.
science is actually saying. Like, these guys are saying right here in this paper,
Mhm.
look, we're not saying that it's all just blind random chance. Now,
Yeah,
we're
it's
trying to say that there is some kind of goal directedness, but
that's
it doesn't need God, though. That's the
yeah.
point.
That, and I would say, yeah, that's a misrepresentation of evolution. It's like it's not
Yep.
blind chance. Sure, there's the random mutation component, but I would say that is not. Scientists usually don't characterize that the same way that they characterize randomness in quantum mechanics. There's scientists who would say what happens in quantum mechanics is true randomness, but
Mm-hmm.
when biologists say, oh, there's randomness and mutation, it's not true randomness. It's just
Right.
we our brain capacity just we can't comprehend what's going on. We do not grasp the full picture going on. It's basically
And you could argue that the environment is directing.
yeah.
Like,
Well,
I think that
that's the
yeah.
natural selection part of it.
Right. Nature is selecting, right.
Yeah.
And so now these papers are saying that it's even better than that. Now they're saying that not only is the environment pressuring the things to do things, but the things are actually responding intelligently to these new environmental changes. And so you definitely can say that evolution makes sense, because now we can have a full accounting for why we can reason together. Like, we're made up of intelligent cells and intelligence within our natural, environments. And so it's not so easy to say that we need God now to be the arbiter of all that. Like, now we can say nature's actually doing it.
Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly what a naturalist like myself would say. It's like,
Yep, me too, man. Me too, man. That's where we agree, and that's what I'm saying. Whether at the bottom is some, conscious intelligence or not, it doesn't really matter. At some point, we can agree that nature's, you know, can offer that intelligent response.
yeah.
We can all agree to that. So that's the real important thing right there. Whether it's all, where it comes from is just kind of just a mental masturbation, in my opinion,
No,
sometimes.
no, I agree. I mean, and boy, do we humans love our mental masturbation.
Oh yeah, masturbation is healthy. It's healthy to masturbate, man.
Yeah. If there's one thing you should get from this conversation, it's that.
That's right. Al, he says, still got the devil in me, but I'm trying. Like I say, one is only as good as the people around them. Use Grok, you will never be disappointed. Oh yeah, for finding information. So Al, I think you're a Mormon. and you used to not be a Mormon. I think you've recently become a Mormon. So I think Sammy was alluding to that. She says, laughing out loud, Al says he's a Mormon now. That's a pretty big leap from where he was. So I think he was an atheist before. I remember you, Al, when you were an atheist. That's where I remember you. And I remember on our last public discussion, you had said that you were a Mormon or you were studying Mormonism. So what is it about Mormonism that led you to your beliefs?
That is interesting. You should join us, Al.
Yeah. Don't you know Mormonism is stupid? No, I'm just kidding. That's me.
Yeah, no. I feel like the perfect example of how we should be discussing this is when I forget the name of the Mormon, but he went on Alex's podcast and they had a very deep and thoughtful discussion about his beliefs.
He went on whose podcast?
Alex O'Connor's podcast.
Oh, Alex O'Connor. Yeah. And there was a Mormon he was on with. Yeah. Who? I wonder. I've seen there's a guy named T Jump that had a Mormon on one time. That was pretty interesting. Pretty laid back conversation, but a lot of weird beliefs there. Think like you can be a god that owns your own planet, and a lot of weird beliefs. I mean, they seem weird to me because, you know, I guess I grew up in a time when being born of a virgin was not weird.
What gets me is like when other Christians try to be like, get a load of these guys. And it's like,
yeah,
your beliefs, all right.
You're right. For real, like talking donkeys and snakes, and that's perfectly fine. But thinking that we emerged out of nature, no, that's not. That's ridiculous. It's kind of like ufologists, they'll say, people believe in UFOs. That's ridiculous. Don't they know that's just the devil? It's like, man. But yeah, I like debating Christians. I rather do it if I'm going to do a debate. I'd rather do a real formatted debate, like with opening, cross-examination, rebuttal, closing statement. That'd be a really good thing to do on my channel. And it could be anybody. And one of the things I do too, and I encourage everybody to do this if you are in the debate world, is do stillman debates. Take a position that you don't really hold and try to argue for it your best. Like if you're an atheist, try to be your best Christian and put your best Christian argument forth. That way it helps you understand the views from another side as well, and it helps your debate skills too, because it makes you, examine and understand, the technicalities of that, But yeah, so Al, if you want to jump on in, man, because he was asking, is there an invite? All right, let me put that invite up.
You put it in.
Oh, I did put. That's how you got on here. That's right.
Yeah.
I'll put it one more time. Al, if you want in, man, click the link, and we'll debate Mormonism.
Or at least just try to get a better understanding.
Yeah, let's get an understanding, But
I think.
Oh yeah. Oh, I meant. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was
just gonna say you said if there's like any real difference between determinism and compatibilism. I think it's just. It's like, yeah, compatibilism is mostly determinism. It's just when it comes to making personal choices, the compatibilists will usually argue there's a certain amount of freedom when doing that. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, there's a freedom in the sense of like if a cop tells me I can't drive down the road 100 miles an hour and I really want to, that's taking away my freedom. To it could be argued, but I mean, it's still determined though because it's depending on how we define determinism. Like, what do we mean in freedom? What do we mean by freedom?
Yeah.
Because ultimately everything is just determined. I mean, really, if we look at it ultimately,
Hmm.
it's got to be. There's no way around it. Because even if you're doing what you want to do, you're determined. Your wants are determined.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
I mean, when it comes to compatibilists, it's like, to me, it's just it's a it comes down to word choice, and it's like you where I would say there is no free will in that little interaction of when it comes to personal choices. It's like we can just agree to disagree, and it's I would offer much more pushback to someone who believes in libertarian free will. Who's
Oh
just
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Libertarian free will is like a definite contradiction.
yeah.
Like that one's real. But there's Diesel from Empathy Respect channel wanted to put a public apology out here to atheists because he's a Christian.
Uh-huh.
And I told him I'd read it on my channel. He says, "Atheists, I would like to publicly apologize. I have over the last few years, well, maybe I should let me share my screen.
Okay.
Maybe that'll be more appropriate. Here we go. So for those who can't see, it says, Atheists, I would like to publicly apologize. I have over the last few years unmercifully attacked the cult of atheism. I did this because I saw all that atheism has done to this planet. However, after deep thought, I came to the conclusion that atheism serves a vital balance in the world, ensuring that the population never gets too big, as we need atheists taking out tens of millions of people to help make sure the roads are drivable and there is enough food for a smaller population. Thank you for your incredible contributions to the benefit of mankind." Wow,
Um,
what do you think about that?
it's a very backhanded compliment. All right.
Yeah. And he says he's very sincere about that. So
Oh,
he's
all right.
sorry. So Diesel, if you're watching and you want to come on and explain to us how that wasn't a backhanded compliment, please join the stream. We would like to discuss.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, I think that a lot of Christians will say, and even Muslims will say that, because of the whole marriage thing and abortion thing, and that, you know, they're more prone to increase the population because they're not having abortions,
All
they're
right.
getting married, they're having kids, whereas the atheists, they're just going to destroy mankind by not having kids and having all these abortions. But my
Um,
whole thing is that I was looking at statistics on that
yeah.
last week, and most people that have abortions are identify as Christians.
Yeah. If just like how strangely enough, the majority of people who say gay sex is a sin, it's like the red states have the highest degrees of people who look up gay porn. Interesting.
Yes, isn't that kind of how weird that is, right? And like I think here in Florida they had some Republican guy who was against um gay and trans issues, and they found him. I think they found out that he molested a little boy or something like
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
Doth protest too much there, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the sign. It's a red flag. Like the Boy Scouts, a Christian,
Catholic
very
Church.
Christian, yeah, Catholic Church, yeah.
Yeah, funny how the people who are the biggest groups of child molesters comes from the clergy or the I believe it's the public school system, and it's like, and the people who, and it's statistically always going to be someone you know, so not someone you don't know. So
Right.
It's this. Yeah, it's fear mongering when it comes to the LGBT community.
Oh yeah, and like with the trans issue, it's like, and this pertains to both sides. It's like both sides will scream, "Oh, it's less than 1% of the population that are trans, so why is it a big deal?" Yet both of these groups are making it their main, deal. And with the conservatives, they make it their crusade to address the trans people. Like, these people are crazy. These people are trying to change our culture. These people are trying to make, they're trying to molest women in the bathroom because they're freaks, and they're just dressing up like women to get their freak on or whatever in the bathroom. And which it's been shown that sometimes that does happen, but like I said, that's such a small thing that it shouldn't be such a national outrage.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's going to be bad people in all groups.
Yeah.
Sure, there's going to be child molesters in atheists, Hindus, trans, gay, but it's like we have to, if we're going to make an actual make this an actual societal issue, we have to look at the statistics and go off of that. And it's like, it doesn't pan out for you conservatives. It doesn't.
Right. And like Sammy said, both sides are trying to tell the other side how to live. Exactly. And this comes from the psychology of beliefs. People believe that their worldviews are correct, and they do this extrinsically. So they hold these beliefs, and then they go out and they try to change the world because of their beliefs. And they never really question their beliefs first to see if maybe it's out of balance, or do I have all the facts on my side, or what the case is, and is it even worth it, to make it such a big priority.
And I mean, as someone who considers himself an ally of trans people, it's like, I get it that you can't force acceptance, but at the end of the day, for me, it's like, it doesn't really cost me anything to just be a decent person to someone else. Like, I don't feel like it's you're asking. I don't feel like they're asking too much.
Well, I think the key is exposure. So for me, like, most races, for example, don't really have friends that are of the opposite race, first of all.
Yeah.
So they're not going to really understand, maybe a white person's point of view or a black person's point of view or whatever, because they don't have black friends or white friends or whatever the case is. And so they don't have that association. But you'll notice, like, every time I hear a story about an ex-racist or somebody, it's like, yeah, I had to work, or I had to go to the military and, work alongside, people of a different race. And this sort of helped me see that they're just people like me. And we have the same feelings. We bleed the same. We have the same issues. And we even got along. We had a lot in common, and that's how it all broke down for me. And it's the same thing with the trans. If you actually had a trans friend, maybe you would start to see them in a different light. I can't dictate what a person's experience is. I may not understand it. Like, I'm not I don't know what it's like to feel I was born in the wrong body. I don't even think that concept makes sense.
Mm.
I think you are your body. You kind of are what you are, But that's the mystery of the human mind, man. That's the mystery of how the brain works. And like, who am I to say that they don't have this experience? I just take them at their word. Okay, you feel like
Exactly.
you're a man in a woman's body, or a woman in a man's body, or whatever the case is, then I accept that
Yeah.
and I
And
respect that.
and to me, it's like, conservatives want to keep saying that the science is on their side, and it's like, well, I guess if you've never gotten past seventh grade biology, it's
Mm,
our understanding of sex, both of sex and gender, has gone a long way since the 1970s. It's like it's not even when it comes to sex, that's not a complete binary. It's like intersex people completely destroys that. It's like, sure, there's male and there's female, and but if it was just a solid binary, you couldn't have people who are XYY or YYX. It's like it's a spectrum between those two sexes. It's like,
yeah, yeah, and a lot of it has to. A lot of these beliefs against certain things has to do with feeling controlled. So a lot of people don't like being told how to speak, like what language to use. So like some conservatives would say, well, why am I a bigot because I refer to a female as a she or a her, and I don't refer to a male as a she, even if she feels like, even if he feels like she is a woman or whatever. I don't want you to control my pronouns. I don't want you to control the way that I express myself. And so a lot of people say, well, maybe a happy middle ground would to call him a male female, or female. No, I'm sorry, a male woman. Because one is a gender, and I think everybody can get on board with gender being a social construct, right?
I
So
mean, it depends on what you're talking about concerning gender. Like when it comes to gender identity, that deals more with biology, or neuroscience. But the rest of it, like like gender expression, or gender constructs. That's all social construct. Yeah.
yeah, so like, you know, I'm a real man. What does that mean? You know, um, so is a gay person like I have a friend who's gay.
Yeah.
He expressed the other day on Facebook that he cannot stand it when other gay men refer to him as girl. Like they'll say, "Hey, girl," and he's like, "Just because I'm gay doesn't mean I identify as a girl. Like I identify as a man,
Hmm.
and I don't like it when people refer to me that way." Like he goes, when women say it to me, I give them a break because they're straight women and maybe they don't really understand. But gay men calling me girl, they should know better, he says. Um, so because, and this kind of highlights the fact that gender is more of a social construct. Like, and then there's other gay men that say, look, you can call me girl all day long. Like, I feel like I'm a girl. I feel like,
Well, I don't know. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, I know, like, with how the language has changed over the years. It's like there's a lot of people now who view man and woman more geared towards as gender, and male and female more geared towards as referring to sex. Uh,
hmm
But like when it comes to like your identity, like when it comes to like conservatives who are like, man, I shouldn't feel forced to conform to your identity, but it's like, but we do that with everyone else all the time.
yeah,
And so to me, it's like if someone is named James, but they've gone their whole life with the nickname of Jim, and that's what they prefer to be called. We don't be like, well, sorry, Jim, you're James, because that was what you were born with. Like
hmm
that doesn't make any sense to me.
Skeptic Haven, I think this is Wes,
Okay.
and Wes is a good friend of mine. And he says a lot of the problem is misogyny, the whole attitude towards these things. Gays are too girly, etc. Yeah, I agree. Like a lot of the people that can't stand gay men is because they don't identify with feminine traits. They don't identify with that feminine sort of thing. And like me, I'm a very honest person, and I don't think it's very controversial to say this. And I say it openly because I like to be a real person, so people know who I am. Um, I'm not gay, and I think that gay behavior, like the gay sex thing, kind of grosses me out or whatever. Just honestly, but having said that, it doesn't make me hate gay people. Like I said, I've got gay friends. I've got people that I care a lot to respect them, and I
Well,
support their marriages and stuff like that. It's just that they know where I stand, and
mhm.
it's not a big deal. Like they think that my having sex with women is gross, and
Yeah,
I'm cool with that. You know?
I was about to say, like, I bet to them the straight sex is gross. It's like I don't think the gross part is the issue. It's like
Yeah.
it's seeing them as lesser. And
Exactly, exactly. That's the whole point. It's human rights, you know, and dignity. They're human beings, first of all. Even trans people, whether you understand them or not, they're human beings and they deserve dignity, respect, and it's just like if you know you shouldn't have to really say that. So you should tell that this Katie. I think she may feel differently about what you've said about her in trans. Yeah. So Katie, she's a friend of mine, and Katie got kind of mad with me because I did a show with Sophia and Logan Daughtry, who has his own channel, and they were expressing trans men or trans women in women's spaces, and so they were saying that some women feel uncomfortable with trans women in spaces because they still see them as a threat, like as men, and they feel like they need their privacy. Like they don't want to shower with a man, even if the man identifies as a woman. It makes them feel some sort of way, in a real bad way. And so while they support trans people in general and don't have a problem, like Logan would say, I don't have a problem if a man came in the bathroom with me who was identifying as a woman and vice versa. Like if a woman came in the bathroom with me who used to be a man, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I don't feel the threat
right.
because I'm a man.
Mhm.
So their point was, as a woman, if they feel this way, are they really bigots because of feeling that way,
But
or are they just, what's the deal with that?
my 2 cents towards that though is I feel like there's a bit of an unrealistic part of it, which is why would the trans person be telling people in a private setting like that hey, I'm a trans woman. It's like, or I'm a trans man, and I feel like that would put not only the biological women, but it would put the trans person in an uncomfortable state. It's like if you're a trans woman and you I guess for all intents and purposes you look like a biological woman, you would just shower and get it over with. You
Yeah,
would not make a statement that you are a
right, right,
trans.
right. That has a lot to do with it. And so for me, like I try to be objective and is equality, like equal as possible. So that's what we were all kind of concluding. Like, um, trans lives matter, but so do women's lives. So what if women feel uncomfortable? Do they should have a voice too? But then trans people obviously they have a voice and they should be able to. So we kind of like
Well, yeah,
talked about middle grounds, like compromises,
yeah.
ways that we can make it
Uh,
work.
some it's like uh, human rights isn't always you know easy to work through. It's like sometimes rights are going to overlap, and we got to figure shit out.
Yeah, and I think to get back to the point with Katie,
Hmm.
me and Katie, she's a trans woman, and we've done podcasts together. I've supported trans rights on her channel, like maybe 4 or 5 different shows I've done with her to support trans rights and stuff like that. And so she kind of knows where I stand, but I think she was a little shocked when she saw that I came on and we had that discussion. Now, does that make me a bigot? No, I can certainly tell you I'm not bigoted against trans people at all. I'm just willing to have that open conversation. I'm willing to entertain people's. It's like, am I a Christian because I entertained Greg yesterday
Mhm.
about the Bible and listened to a
Yeah,
lot of his stuff? No, I'm not a
that
Christian.
doesn't make you a Christian.
No, it's like I can talk about things and not get mad about things. It doesn't
Well,
make, you know,
I'd say, well, I mean, to be fair though to her, it's like you're not a trans person. You're not the one having to deal with that. But I get what you're saying. Like the whole, because it's like I do think there are genuine, um, you know, uh, issues that conservatives do bring up sometimes. It's like for the most part, it's just fear mongering. But it's like it's like, but a broken clock is right, twice a day. And for when it comes to trans issues, I can think of like the whole the sports situation. It's like there's a genuine concern of like there's an issue here. We need to figure it out. Do I think conservatives have the right idea of it, of just banning trans people altogether from sports? No, that doesn't solve anything.
right.
It's like, but there should be a conversation there. Like,
Yeah, like, with that situation, like, the whole thing about sports, what makes sports interesting is when you put people of the same weight class together, the same height, the same physical skill levels. When you put people together, then it's interesting. It's like you wouldn't want to put like a heavyweight boxer against a featherweight. We all know that the heavyweight's going to kill the guy. And so I mean, I guess some people like to see people get killed or whatever, but most people like the competition when that's the whole thing. And so the premise of the sports transgender is if you let men, especially in particular sports like boxing or basketball or football or things like that, if you're putting a woman up against men or a man, it's usually that way. It's usually like if you put a big man who now identifies as a woman, and he's just out there killing it in track and killing it in basketball, it raises suspicion. Like it makes people think, did this guy just do that so he could win,
well,
unfairly?
and even then, it's like it's very complex because it's like it all depends on how did the trans person growing up have access to transgender healthcare. Because it's like if you were a trans if you were an athlete, let's say you were a male athlete growing up, but you were trans, so you're a trans woman, and so you did not transition until you were already far into adulthood, and you've been a professional you're still a professional athlete. It's like
Mhm.
going through the transition doesn't make you magically lose that muscle mass. It's like you're still going to keep all of that. And so, but then if you are a trans woman who had puberty blockers as a kid, you had hormones therapy as a teenager, and then when you become an adult, you become a trans woman, but then decide to become an athlete, then it's like you don't have any advantage whatsoever.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that logic. I see the logical argument there.
And so it would
Um
make sense that it's like, the trans athlete who's always been an athlete would have an unfair advantage, but the other trans woman would not have an advantage.
right, right. And and I just think that society is ultimately going to figure it out. And but right now with just I don't know, the spirit I get with our new leadership in America is more of a extreme fight against what was used to be starting to become more normalized. Like we were starting to really talk about LGBTQ, trans. Now we of course we did have, some disagreements that got contentious on both sides, but this administration seems like they're just all out going to just ban trans from existence. That's the spirit that I feel from them, right? And which, it's terrible, you know, because there's a higher principle, which is live and let live, like Sammy was talking about. You know, it's kind of like, racism. Race relations has gotten better and better and better over time, and it came in fits and starts. But this one is kind of like the same thing, except that the administration is really trying to stop progress on that front altogether. And I don't think that's realistic either, though. I think you have to respect that trans people exist, and you have to listen to them. They have a voice, But that's the problem with politics. That's why I really don't like engaging in politics, because it's so extreme. And you can't even take a neutral ground with people without somebody thinking that you're on the other side, like a Trojan or something, like a Trojan horse or something. Like what just happened with Katie, like I was just telling you about. Like I just had that one show, just hearing out the other side of the argument and trying to understand it, and it became, oh, you're just a bigot, you're siding with bigots now. You platform bigots or whatever.
See, while I disagree, I'm with you. I would disagree with that, but I also try to give grace to those people
Yeah.
who have felt oppressed their whole life, and so even just a little bit of pushback is going to be seen as threatening, I'd say. And so I'm it's like I wouldn't try to, you know, I don't know how your relationship with her is now, but it's like if that same thing happened to me, it's like I would try to salvage it. It's like
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I didn't block her. She basically came back to me and said, after watching the show, I don't think we could be friends, and I'd rather you not interact with me anymore. So I just kind of respect her view, and I just kind of told her, look, I apologize if that's the impression you got. I really am not a bigot. I'm sorry you feel this way. And she never really responded. So I mean, you
I
have,
mean,
at
yeah,
some point you have to let people form their own conclusions, and you don't want to really just force them to see you in some other light that they can't
oh
wrap
yeah,
their head
no,
around,
like if she no longer wants to speak with you, well, that's that. You just have to move on, and you keep being keep being an ally. It's like I know
Yeah,
there's some
exactly.
people who've had that experience, and then they're like, well, fuck trans people now. It's like wait,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Fuck that. Yeah, that's like, yeah, for me it's a deeper principle at play. Like
Mhm.
there's a couple things going on at the same time. Like, first of all humans, however they identify, deserve dignity and respect. And they have a right to their opinion, they have a right to their voice, and they have a right for you not to be coming at them with disparaging remarks and things like that. That's not the way that I see things. I think that, but on the other hand, I think that all people also, along with that, have a right to talk about whatever they want, and they have a right to express their opinions. So, in a way, like I'm against always physical violence against someone,
Mhm.
um, and I'm against abusive language against somebody, but I support people to have contrary views. I think that you can't really have a free society unless you have the right to dissent, the right to disagree.
Mhm.
We have to, as a nation, become stronger. We have to be able to disassociate from identifying with beliefs so strongly that we can't talk anymore. Like, if you're in a marriage with someone and you can't talk about certain things because it's just a hot button issue, that's not going to be healthy. At some point, you're going to have to learn how to talk about these things, because that's going to make your relationship stronger when you finally do. Even if these opinions are hard to hear, even if these questions you don't want to hear being questioned about these things, because in your mind, you already have the answer. And when you see another person ask the question that you already have an answer to, that's already going to naturally be offensive to you. You're going to be like, look, man, we already know what the answer is. It's X.
Yeah.
And you don't know it. You can and you can't see it. And so now I'm pissed off at you because why don't you get it? We have to stop that. We have to really appreciate that some people have to catch up.
I mean, you bring up another hot debate topic, which is, misinformation, because it's like I agree, misinformation is bad and it should be combated, but it's like, on what level should it be combated on? Because it's like, if the government's doing it, well, what if it decides that something that is true is now misinformation? It's like, so we got we have that to wrestle with. But on the other side of the spectrum, it's like, I don't want a stupid public. It's like, like the fact that flat earthers are now thriving more than ever. It's like there's a systematic problem going on there, and we have to figure out what that is. Because it's like it's like you can have questions. It's like I have questions, about a great many things, but it's like I'm not going to tell a non-expert. I'm not going to go up to an expert and be like, I know more than you. Like it's like I know. There was this guy on YouTube, and he says you're wrong, and it's like
yeah, and unfortunately, you have to meet people where they're at. It's like that's why I had to ignore a lot of things that Greg was saying yesterday, because a lot of what he was saying I was diametrically opposed to, because I've already answered these questions in my mind, but I had to catch myself and say, look, you can't just attack the dude because he doesn't have the same information we do. He's just not there, or maybe he has other commitments that we're unaware of. And so you just kind of have to slowly unravel stuff for people, but you have to first of all enter into their room with them and then inspect the room little by little with them. Not just go full out rearranging their bedroom and their living room and all that shit, because it's just they're not ready for that. And so that's the art of communication that I'm trying to perfect. And so that's why I have these conversations. And I know that a lot of them are hard, and I really shy away from the transition. I did it because people wanted it so bad. Logan, he contacted me and he was like, yeah, let's do this show. And I'm like, cool. I liked his videos. I understand his concerns and what he was pointing out. But at the same time, I've got friends, Katie, my gay friend who's a trans advocate as well. And I'm deeply, in a, understand where they're coming from and have agreed so many things. But at the same time, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in having that conversation, and it's difficult. And I think a lot of people are just not ready in our society to have conversations. That's what I'm coming to realize, is that a lot of people are so identified in their beliefs that they are not ready for challenges in any sort of, even if you're not really challenging them, they don't even want the question to come up. They just want echo. Everybody's interested in their echo chamber, and that's a hard one, because it appears to them, and they're very sincere. It's like, for them, it's the end of the world. It's like, look, we've got people out trying to murder me. They're trying to murder my community. They're trying to actually physically. You've got a president who's out here, doesn't care and they're letting abuse happen, and they want abuse to happen. They want to wipe us off the earth.
Yeah.
And here you are defending freedom of speech. Like, what about my plight? What about my issue? What about that? Seems to be more pressing
and and
than
I and I mean, it's not like their fears are unfounded. It's
yeah.
it's like when I learned about the Holocaust, and it's like, oh, all these terrible things happened to the Jews and Christians and other groups of people. But what I had to learn on my own, though, is that the people who wore the pink triangle, the gays, lesbians, it's like when they came across them, they're like, oh, we're going to put you into a different sort of prison. You're not actually
Uh-huh.
free. I'm like,
Right.
wow.
Right. And they really, and a lot of conservatives, they forget that human nature has a very ugly side to it. Like, when it comes to things like sexual orientation, for some reason, this is such a big deal. For some reason, humans cannot accept or swallow, especially men. There's a real big emphasis on what constitutes a real man,
Yeah.
and
And
what
I always joke that hey, the most manliest thing you could do is suck another man's dick.
right. Hey man, if it's the best dick, I'll try anything. As long as it's the best, I don't go to Walmart and suck dicks. I go to Neiman Marcus where I
Hell
can get
yeah.
the high quality.
Like, I
Oh man.
forget which comedian did that.
Yeah, CK, Louis CK.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's only gay for the best.
Exactly.
But like, I
on,
don't.
on
I
a more
definitely.
serious note,
Yeah. Yes,
go on.
sir. Go right ahead, man.
Well, I mean, it's like I know it's like men who believe that if you cry, you there's something wrong with you. It's like, dude, you have emotions, like
Hmm.
you can be in touch with your softer side, or if you want to say more feminine side, because spoiler alert, there's nothing wrong with being feminine.
Right. There really isn't, and you have to understand. This goes back to the psychology of belief again. It's like all of our beliefs are based on our feelings,
Yeah.
whether they want to admit it or not. Even their conservative beliefs, even their religious beliefs, even their beliefs against gay people or trans people, is all rooted in emotions and impulses, and and a lot of that's been informed by how they were raised and their echo chambers and what information they're getting daily, what they're feeding themselves. They're all a product of that shit, man. And so it really is important. I think you raise a good point that you should understand that feelings drive a lot of this stuff. Even atheists drive their atheism on their feelings.
Yeah.
Maybe they've had bad experiences in the church, or maybe they feel good when they're sort of rational. They're
Mhm.
more rational. It gives them a feeling of, hey,
Superiority.
superiority. Could be, or could be that just, hey, I'm approaching this in a rational way, and this makes me
well,
feel proud of myself.
well, yeah. As I feel like a lot of atheists forget their how they came to their atheism to begin with. It's like, because even for me, it's like it was an emotional response, and
Hmm.
the rationality, the logic and reason came later. It's like we are emotional species at its core. It's like we want to think of ourselves as super rational. It's like, no, we're not. We our brains did not evolve to be rational. Our brains evolved to survive in the savannah. You know.
And some people argue that a lot of atheists are not really atheists, if that makes sense. Like,
I've come across those people. Yeah.
and I mean, this claim comes from fellow atheists, or comes from fellow theists. Other theists will say this too. So, for example, I came across some of something I read that was really interesting, and there's a lot of statistics behind it. and then I went on YouTube to do the personal experiment myself.
Yeah.
And so I went to kind of see this. Like, one of the things they wanted you to do was, if you go on YouTube or you read or go on social media and you read someone's testimony
Mhm.
about why people converted over to Christianity,
Yeah.
a lot of these people were atheists. And if you look at the reasoning behind why the atheists converted over to the Christian, and
Mhm.
then they compared it, like, look at what he was saying for the last 10 years prior to that. Oh, personal experience is never a good reason. Your anecdotal is noted. Your opinions are noted. Who gives a shit about your theist stupid reasons for why you believed? I don't buy it. Your experiences, who cares? You had a hallucination. You're just fooling yourself. You're deluded. Blah 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 blah
Mhm.
blah. On and on and on and on. 10 years later, you look at this same atheist, and
Mhm.
now he's given his testimonial on YouTube in front of the whole world. Man, I had this experience. It's like God came to me and revealed himself, and I went to church and I felt the Holy Spirit, and now I'm a Christian, and now I see things clearly. And oh, I used to be an atheist, so I know, you can trust me. I used to be an atheist. And it's like, other atheists will say, well, he was always a theist.
No.
Because how is he, and I would disagree with that. And so
Yeah.
I made a video, and
Mhm.
boy, I got attacked by a bunch of atheists when I made that video. My video was pointing that situation out, and this guy came on with his testimony. I was an atheist. Now I'm a Christian because of my
Mhm.
experience and this and that. And so I told him in the video, I was saying, in my little thing that I wrote, I was saying, see, a lot of atheists don't admit it, but they derive their beliefs because of their feelings
Mhm.
and things in experience and personal experiences. And here's the thing. And then a lot of atheists came out and said, man, you're full of shit, man. Them dude, that's not an atheist. That's a theist. He's a theist. The
I
fact that
mean,
he, go ahead. Because
let's see. So, I mean, I generally agree with you. The only things I would say is that it's like just like with theism, you can come to the conclusion of atheism off of bad or faulty reasoning. It's like you don't have to come to a belief rationally, and so it's like if you come to a belief irrationally, you can just as easily go to a different belief the same way.
irrationally.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and
And
so
in the video, I was pointing that out. Like, I was saying, like, a lot of atheists said that they lost Christianity because they had an experience in church or an experience of some negative thing. Maybe they were disillusioned somehow, and that left them angry, and they left the church. They'll never be a Christian, and that drives their anti theological stance, or what do they call it, anti-theism. And they go and they are on a crusade, and it's all based on some experience they had that made them feel a certain kind of way. And then on the other flip side, these same sort of atheists can have another experience that's transformed their mind to accept Christianity.
yeah,
And I was just pointing that fact out, and a lot of
yeah.
people, mainly the atheists, were kind of upset because it kind of, like, I think it made them feel I was attacking atheists, like that they were, and I wasn't. I'm an atheist, so I was just saying, look, we have to be careful. We have to be consistent, or at least observe our inconsistency and then deal with it one way or the other. Either experiences matter or they don't.
Well,
Make your mind up.
I mean, so it's like I'm never gonna question um, you know I'm going to accept someone at face value if they say they're a Christian or they say they're an atheist. It's like I really hate it. I don't want to get into when Christians are like, this isn't a real Christian. I'm just like, no. If he says he believes in Jesus,
Right.
he's a Christian. It's like I'm not going to get the what is it, the no true Scotsman policy. It's
Right.
like, try to
Right.
avoid
Right.
that.
Yep.
I mean, the only way I would say, oh, that guy wasn't an atheist at all to begin with, is if they're their journey to atheism began and ended with, I got upset with God. It's like, well, then did you even question
Right.
the God concept itself? Are you still angry at God? Well, I mean, well, if you still
Right.
technically believe in him, but it's like that's a very niche case. I haven't really come
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
that many people who have only gone that far in their thinking. But and then when it comes to the whole, is personal belief important versus not important? It's like, to me, it's like, for me, it's like, all right, so there's different levels of evidence, and more if it's higher on the hierarchy, well, it's more important than the personal experience, but that doesn't mean that personal experience isn't important. It's like,
Right.
to me, it's like, there's, at the very top you have systematic analysis, and then at the very bottom, there's usually, it's like expert opinion, personal belief. But it's like, that doesn't mean personal belief doesn't matter at all, because it's like, at this point in my life, it's like, I feel like the only thing that would convince me to become a Christian again is if I had a personal experience
Right.
with Jesus.
Bingo. Bingo. See, that's what I'm getting at. Bingo. I think that's the unspoken truth that no one wants to really admit.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on, Al? How you doing, man?
Hey.
Oh, doing well. Hope you guys are too.
We
Oh,
really are, man. Thanks for joining. Any
Yep,
thoughts that you had on that?
I'm just gonna lurk. If you'd like an opinion, let me know.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead,
thanks.
please.
Oh no, you guys covered the last topic pretty well.
Oh, okay, cool,
You
man.
know my stance on certain people who proclaim to be atheists.
Yeah,
So
and because Al, am I mistaken? You used to be an atheist, right?
I'm still an atheist, but I don't really care if people's beliefs lead them to be good people. Hey, have at it. I'm
Oh, I
not going
see.
to take a kid's blankie, because it's
Yeah,
stupid and it makes them comfortable.
right, exactly.
Yep.
Yep. Um, it's kind of like what I was saying in the beginning. How many? What was that? Hold on, let me find that quote. I think I wrote it down. Let's see. Never mind. Anyways, people have to change themselves. They got to come to these things on their own, essentially. Like, people teach themselves. We're just always there to be a voice that maybe plant a seed or create some kind of influence.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, people have to decide whether giving up the blankie is a good idea or not.
Yeah, it's a personal choice. You can be an atheist and be a good person, and certain religions maybe not so much, but yeah.
Now, you studied Mormonism, or would you consider yourself a Mormon, or
No,
how does?
as I said, you're only as good as the people around you, and the closest thing I can see, biggest example that inspires people to do God's work is them.
Oh, I see.
And yeah, so it's a good group to associate yourself with.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I was kind of looking for a church here for a while to kind of, because the one thing churches do is they do have a sense of community, a really strong sense of community, and
Yeah,
they can
definitely.
be, and the music's nice sometimes, and it's a lot of good points about it. But I tried, to find some things, but my personality and the way that I think just didn't fare well. I couldn't really open up easily to people because they were too embedded. But that's not to say, because I
That's
live in the
true.
Bible Belt, I live in, the redneck Riviera, man. So I'm not gonna do
Well,
too well here.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's very difficult talking to I don't know, people that have got their head buried in a book.
Yeah,
And when they first approach you, they really do talk to you like you're a child. And
yeah,
it seems like they're reading a pamphlet, and it's like, hey, buddy, are you on the
yeah,
clock all the time? Come on, man. Let's have a beer and relax. Let's get to know each other.
Yeah, just
And-
chill. Just take it
and it's
down
hard.
a few notches.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to get through that with them. I will admit it. There's a lot of days like they oh, would you like to go do this? And no, leave me alone. I just got off work.
Yeah. It's a bad
But-
sign when you meet somebody in an elevator and their first question is, "Oh, nice to meet you. So what church do you go to?"
Exactly.
Hate that question.
Yeah.
Do you believe in God? No. They
No.
just sit there and they look at you with a blank stare.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well,
What do
maybe
you
we'll
mean?
get you too. I said, I hope one day you do.
Yeah.
What do you
And-
mean by God, and what do you mean by belief?
And I know Mormons get a bad rap along with Jehovah's Witnesses for being the ones who are constantly knocking on doors. But I have to agree with Al. Like some of the nicest Christians I ever met were definitely Mormons.
Oh yeah.
It's like you can't say a bad thing about them. And the only ones that knock on the doors are the missionaries. They're like
Yeah.
little puppies.
The elders.
I had a funny story. I'll tell you about that sometime. But yeah, dude, I don't know. If you get past the the missionaries, it's like, yeah, these people actually do build a good community.
Mhm.
And they're not averse to picking up guns to defend that community.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I like how they have their own economic system. Like at least in Utah, they all stick together and support each other as a community, kind of like a Jewish community or something. They're very tight knit, and I think that's the key to particular communities' success, even as individuals. It's like, what sort of community do you come out of? Like white people in general have a very tight-knit community. White people, businesses support businesses. I mean, it's just so big and everything. Take like the black community, you have like a handful of black businesses that support each other. But unfortunately, it's that community has a long way to go to create that kind of cohesiveness and to really build up that way. And that's what I would really love to see. But even a lot of black leaders, a lot of black people will tell you that it's like crab in a bucket type mentality. It's a lot of hate on each other, jealousy, and
That's
foolishness.
true.
I would say though that's the way the system was built up though. It's like
Of course,
In a
I
way.
mean, in a way it was, because like if you look at the history, like when black people were freed from slavery, in an amazing amount of time, they had like the Black Renaissance. They had their own businesses, their own very strong communities and families. There were no ghettos like talking about today. But then in the late 50s and 60s, things changed drastically. All of a sudden the Democrats and or well, I wouldn't say the Democrats, the Republicans actually came in and wanted to subsidize black families and create this system of the social net, the welfare systems, the it contributed to the single family. So there's a huge drastic change in the dynamic, the family dynamic, which affected the community. And
we
it's just been
can't forget about the important part though that led to because I mean if black families are being successful, there's no need to subsidize them. It's like the black people had their Black Wall Streets, they had their successful communities, and then white people saw that and were like, we're gonna burn that down.
Of course, that's my whole point, is that white people came in and they ruined it one way or the other. They even ruined it. They even ruined it with the outwards message that we're trying to help you. We're taking away. We're trying to take away your rights in order to help you.
Who was that guy? I forget his name off the top of my head, but he was the one that created the Tuskegee Institute.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
He just, Interest, really, really. I mean, just one of the perfect American stories.
Yeah.
And he came in. He was a free slave,
Mhm.
and he wanted to get bricks to build, the institution. And nobody would sell to him because he was black. So he said, you know what? Fuck y'all. I'm going to go buy my own kiln, build my own bricks. And that wasn't far long later. And everyone was coming to him because his bricks were great.
Mhm.
And he said, I'm not only going to educate these people, I'm going to teach you a trade. I don't care if it's digging ditches.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
magnificent guy. And by the way, it was a Democrat that implemented that Great Society.
Mm.
And that come around, and well, here we are today.
I mean, I'd say the black community is one of the very few communities I can say who are justified in being skeptical of vaccines due to,
Yeah.
the government
Sure.
experimenting on them with vaccines.
Heck yeah. Hell yeah, man. One of my favorite civil rights leaders is not even Martin Luther King, to be honest with you. My favorite civil rights leader is Malcolm X, man.
Yes, sir. This
Yeah.
one.
Malcolm X,
Yeah.
he argued that, black people needed to create their own institutions, businesses, communities to be truly self-reliant and thrive,
Yeah.
He wanted people to control their own destiny and resist the systematic oppression that was even done in the name of liberalism and in the name of helping them people, because he says, I don't trust the man. I don't trust that they're trying to help us.
Exactly.
All they're doing is they're breaking our families up. They're getting us to beg at at the hand that feeds us, and as soon as we bite back, they're going to stop feeding us. They're going to stop supporting us, because why should we trust them? What is it in history that gives us a precedent to trust white people at this point? And he says, no, we need to be self-sufficient. We need to have our own schools, our own institutions, our own thing until we can learn how to cooperate and get together. Until then, it's going to be forced, and it's going to be us on the bottom of the hierarchy while they're at the top. That's where they want us to be.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing it this way. They're trying to fool us into joining the hierarchy. And
Pawns of the
sure enough,
Democrats.
even till today, all you hear about from white liberal people is how black people don't have cell phones to know where voting stations are. They don't know how to get to the post office. They don't know how to do this. They need, special laws to protect them, which I understand it sounds good on one end, but at the other end, it sort of like cripples people and creates this victim mentality, keeps them at the lower end of the hierarchy. And we know this because we know a lot of black people become successful. We've had a black president.
Well,
And
I'd say, was it Martin Luther King Jr. who said that, like, it's not the open bigoted conservative that's the true issue. It's like the liberal milk
Yep.
toast liberal types. And
Yes.
I agree with that. It's like, to me, liberals are just they can really be the worst, because it's like they'll point out a problem, like, hey, there's homelessness, we should do something about it. But then when you're like, yeah, there is a problem, we should do affordable housing, but then they're like, in our neighborhood, no, we can't
Right,
lower our
right.
property
Exactly.
values.
Exactly.
And the
Exactly.
thing, that's their whole motto, is
Yeah.
enslavement. Everything
Enslavement.
that has to do with we'll give you this. And they don't tell you it's like buying health insurance nowadays.
Yeah.
You can buy it. We're not going to tell you what you're going to get until you buy it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you're more than likely going to get screwed.
Mhm.
And that's that party in a nutshell, basically. And unfortunately, the blacks, they went after them first, and now they're after all of us.
Well, and the other issue is when you talk to people, like, if you bring this stuff up, or if you question it, or you try to talk about the history and what you observe, a lot of people will again call you a bigot, because you're talking about things, you're questioning these assumptions. And you have to understand that in psychology. You know, I think that government, politicians, advertisers, everyone kind of knows or they're keyed in on human psychology and what it's going to take to get people to mutually consent to being on the bottom of that hierarchy for whatever reason. And my whole thing is that that's such a waste. Like, do you know how much talent we have in the black community? That's just a potential that we're really just stopping. You know, we're trying to keep them out. It's like we're only hurting ourselves. You know, the strength of America is in its diversity and its inclusion. But, you know, as long as we feed a certain segment of society and we subsidize them, we create a whole class of lower end people that'll never be useful for society. In fact, they'll be the scapegoat for the crime and the blame for the atrocities and become a political football.
Yep.
And everybody's mutually consenting to it because even the well-meaning white folks will say, we need this because someone's got to feel sorry for these people.
Oh, jeez.
And then the other people will say, we need, like, I know a KKK guy right here in town, and he's a Democrat. And he said, and he supports all of this stuff like welfare and and he says, look, man, if we don't want black people to be in our status. That's been the problem. We don't want them there. We need to keep them in their place. So I want my black people ignorant. I want them stupid. I want them needing me. I want them to respect me. I want them to understand their place in society. And I want them on welfare. I love it when I see black people shooting each other and killing each other. That's where I want them.
Yeah. And it's like, it does welfare such a disservice because it's like, I'm not against actual welfare because it's like, I look at the welfare states of like Scandinavia and it's like, they're doing great. But then it's like, but what we're doing is welfare that does nothing.
It creates a voting class.
Right.
A particular party. It's the same reason they want all these illegals coming in to do a job that the American people won't, and that's vote Democrat.
It's like they just want that pat on the back.
Virtue signaling. And if you're right, I lived in Germany for a number of years, and I had people who were Germans who were friends and some who were family, and they were on the social system, but they didn't live in projects. They didn't live in there was no crime to speak about. It was equitable. In other words, you could work and you could still draw social money. And if you weren't working, you get the full coverage. When my wife got pregnant, she got fully covered for the birth of our child. So it was no focused there was no focused out group that they were sort of supporting for welfare, while the in groups were like people that couldn't really, like, you here in America, you can't work a 40-hour job to get on your feet and at the same time have assistance because you have, a situation where you need money. No, you can only qualify for a certain amount of money if you don't work in your situation. In other words, the system makes it so that you are stuck in your situation for generations.
Perpetual poverty.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
A lot of people do not realize that. And it did, like I said, started with the blacks. And it's everybody. If anything, you need any kind of assistance, you're pretty much up the river without a paddle. But I have it's going to sound weird. People used to depend on the church. It kept tight communities. And that was basically welfare. And you had to be a good person or they tell you to go kick rocks.
Right.
And that's just food for thought. Bring that back into the picture.
Well, I mean, it's like, I feel like it's like people are wondering, or the Democrats are wondering why so many people chose Christian fascism over them, and it's like we're bringing up all these points of like, it's like you pretend to be for the little guy when you're not. It's like it's like people see through your bullshit, and it's like, and while I think Trump is an existential crisis to our way of life, it's like I can't say like, oh, I didn't see this coming. It's like the writing was on the wall and you just ignored it.
Yeah, you know, on I have a friend who's really scared about Trump right now. Like, he's a good friend of mine. We've been friends since the 80s. And this guy, he says, "Man, this is Nazi Germany, dude. We're in Nazi Germany right now. Um, it's really bad. People really need to wake up." And so my whole point to him was, number one, you're insulting the people that died in the Holocaust with this shit. That's the first thing. Number two, if it's so bad, why are you on Facebook crying about it? Why don't you leave the country, or why don't you gather us together and let's make a move? Because if you really take this serious, I mean, think of, because he was, and part of his post was, if the people of 1933, what should they have done now that we have retrospect and can see Hitler coming to power? We should be doing what we always say they should be doing, but we're not. And I'm like, well, what are you doing besides just saying that? Are you getting ready to leave the country? Are you getting ready to organize and do something? He's like, oh, I can't afford to leave the country. Oh, I can't. I got to go to work every day. I don't have time to pick up ammo and connect with community and figure out where we're going to hide. And I like, then you don't really take it serious. You're not really serious about what you're saying. And by the way, where were you 6 months ago when, before Trump got in office? Where were you to vote? Why didn't you vote for Trump out? Where are you people? You said that you knew this was coming and you saw Trump as a threat and it can't happen. Then why didn't y'all get out and vote? Because when I look at the statistics, nobody got out to vote. The only people that voted were the Trump people.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like, well, why didn't people vote Democrat? It's like, well, they are the ones who will tell you that it's, what was it? I forget their name, but the current head of the DNC basically said that billionaires are not the problem. That as long as they are our billionaires and not those nasty, bad conservative billionaires, everything's going to be fine. It's like, so you're still going to propagate the system that puts people in poverty, and you wonder why people are fed up with you.
Right. To me, I just think that in America, people are more addicted to outrage culture, and they're more addicted to virtue signaling, and they're not really serious though. They don't really take this stuff serious. Like, if they really thought this shit is Nazi Germany, it seems like they would be doing something rather than being on Facebook every day. It's like, I don't know, man. I just have like a different picture. Well, like, for me, it just seems like you're being a drama queen when you're just always complaining.
See, I mean, the thing is, at least for me, when I'm, it's like, when it comes to societal issues that I have no control over, it's like, to me, venting is the only source of therapy I have. But it's like, we let ourselves get into a position to where that if we say, oh, hey, we need to get together and protest and take time off for work, but oh, hey, look at that, if we take off time for work, I can no longer afford to pay my bills. It's like we kind of dug our hole there. It's like we should have been protesting like back in the 80s, and
right. I mean, if that's really what it is, because like and again, it just goes back to beliefs and why we believe what we do. It's like, because now I've got friends on the other extreme, and they're just happy. They think, man, the flowers smell better, the air feels better, I'm relaxed because Trump's in office, getting rid of all these illegal immigrants and getting, he's kind of getting rid of this trans stuff, and the DEI. I don't have to see this diversity anymore and equality shit. I don't have to hear about that crap anymore. And they're happy with that situation. They don't see this as Nazi Germany at all. They see this as utopia has finally arrived. The Messiah has finally come to power.
Can I point something out?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me. You notice the atmosphere has changed quite a bit. All the insanity, it's not gone yet, but the insanity is down to about level 1. People aren't going as nuts. Facebook has pretty much gone quiet for the most part. Why is that?
I don't know, man. I would like to feel that way, but on my stuff anyways, it's just a shit show, man, on my page. Because I think the problem with me is I have friends from every sector, like on both sides. I have extremists on the left, extremists on the right, and they all get on my page and just battle it out.
And your friend who says we're basically Nazi Germany now, even I, who think Trump is an existential threat, don't believe that. It's like Nazi Germany didn't happen overnight. It was, Hitler didn't get elected and then all of a sudden there were camps for the Jews. It's like that was a gradual process, and I think we could get to that point. Like I know you commented on one of my posts where it's like, if Trump can just keep getting away with labeling anyone who disagree with him as a terrorist, and he can just grab them up and put them wherever he wants, and we don't say anything, it's like eventually that could lead to a very authoritarian state.
Of course, of course, and I think that's what my friend, his name is Scott. I think that's what he is driving at, is that we are Nazi Germany right before the Holocaust. Like we are in 1933, like we're heading up to it. And he says the paintings on the wall, the writings on the wall, and now's the time to either get the fuck out or pick up your guns and start fighting now before it gets to that point.
But our society, the people who rule us, have conditioned us to do nothing in these sorts of things.
I'll agree with you on that one. That's the right and the left.
Yeah.
The right really wanted Trump back in there. They could have done something on J6. But I don't know. One thing I have noticed, though, is people's motivations. And when you're looking at the left, the way that they're going crazy, burning Teslas and all this other nonsense, what's their motivation behind that? And it always comes down to their money.
Yeah.
They want to slink off the state, and they want free shit, basically. And Trump's coming in there and saying, no, you're going to be an American now. You're going to get off your ass. You have the freedom to do so and to live up to your full potential. And they're throwing a hissy fit.
Well,
I'd say both parties are pretty bad at doing boycotting stuff, like the right, like vandalizing Bud Light beer, and sometimes it was the wrong beer. So
that was a funny one back a couple years ago with that. But it's like, I'm not picking sides, to tell you the truth, because it's like I actually hate the Republicans as much as Trump does, and it's the only party that can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Well, yeah, like
it blows you out of the water.
Yeah, like I'm not a fan of either party, but and I would say that the Republicans are worse at the moment because they have an entire cult around one person. But it's like they're at least effective in what they're trying to accomplish. Like the Democrats just keep floundering. They are wet.
Yeah, their whole point, in my opinion, it seems like their whole tactic was feel sorry forism. That was going to be the thing that they wanted to use, because they didn't want to go populist. Like if they wanted to go populist, they wouldn't have thrown Bernie Sanders over the boat. They threw Bernie Sanders over the board because they wanted to support establishment, which was the donors and the donor class. And so they had to keep them in good graces. So what did they do? They switched up their tactic, and let's make, social stuff, racism, um, equality issues, LGBTQ, all of these different things were the main driving force. Now, this wasn't in the popular election cycles.
Mhm.
This was all under the radar in, well, not under the radar, but through social media, through social capital is what I call it. They exploited social capital. But the conservatives did it better because they used the podcast to do anti-feel sorry forism. So what they would do is they would have people like Joe Rogan, powerful podcast, where they would always use, like we were talking about earlier, how everybody hates feelings. No one wants to deal with feelings. Everybody wants to look at feelings as not relevant. Like, and and to be honest, it started on the left, because the left were always the ones like, well, the conservatives, they let their feelings about God and their feelings about religion and their feelings about gays cloud their rational judgment. We're the party of reason. We're the party of rational science and, global warming and climate change. And, we're the party of, more rational view. Well, somewhere along the line, the conservatives sort of took up that fucking narrative. And now they're the ones who distance themselves from feelings as a rejection. So they went ahead and said, no, look at them. They feel sorry for the black people. They feel sorry for the immigrants. They feel sorry for the trans people and the women. What weakness. They're weak. We get to be powerful, and we're like these studs that are like Clint Eastwood that have a big long gun and say, fuck your feelings, man. We're going to talk truth. But what are the facts? That's one of their big taglines. Yeah, but what about facts?
Facts over feelings.
Yeah,
What's the
facts over
number one?
feelings. So now they're exploiting that whole narrative, and that defeated feel sorry forism, and that's why their podcasts became more popular, more effective, and so they got more social capital, and that's why Trump won the election.
It's
What's the number one thing, though, that makes the difference? The Republicans we won't call them Republicans, the conservative podcasters and things like that, instead of coming to the table with emotions, feels, and all that, they come with solutions.
Right.
Even if they're not the right solutions, they are solutions. And Democrats
Well,
had zero.
it might be difficult for some people at first, but eventually they'll get off their asses and, become productive members of society. It's a lot better living a life where you work and build yourself instead of depend on other people.
Well, for me, it's like, the conservatives will, they offer solutions, but it's like, all right, but is that really a solution? Like when it comes to like trans people, where it's like, oh, we're just going to ban them from sports altogether, and it's like, to me, that's not a real solution. And it's like, so to me, it's like, but then the people, the liberals are just like, they don't offer anything else in return. It's like they just remain they just remain silent, and they don't offer a counter narrative.
Well, liberals always have to steal from somebody else to make another group feel better, and they're the number one group at turning people into victims.
Well, right. And see, this is the thing that I've observed, is that what liberals do is they'll point out the simplicity of the Republican or the conservative solution. Like, for example, if you're really overweight, let's say I weighed like 300 pounds and I want to lose weight, there's a solution to that. Stop eating. Start exercising. But while that's a true solution, it isn't really solving anything, because the real problem isn't just the fact that I need to stop eating. The problem is, how can I stop eating? How can I stop doing what I'm doing? So if you really want a solution, you're going to address it holistically. Whereas somebody who just wants to berate someone or who wants to put someone down will say, if you want to fucking stop being a fat ass, stop eating. I don't feel sorry for you. and they'll just laugh at you.
Yeah.
And and that's their point. Their whole the psychological point there that they may not even be aware of themselves is the fact that they're saying what they're saying is not because they really want to help you.
Mhm.
They just want to feel superior.
Yeah.
They want to put you down.
Exactly. And if you do look at it holistically, you might find out it's your exercise and eating right might not even be enough. You might go to an endocrinologist and find out that you have a underactive thyroid, and in order to actually lose weight, you need to be on levothyroxine, as well as eating healthy and exercise.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, let's look at it. If you really want to help, now I'm not saying someone is obligated to want to help. Like, I'm also oddly enough in favor of people to be disconnected from other people, because the reason why is because of a greater principle, which is of freedom. You have to be free to live your life. And if you stop people from, you can't make people feel sorry for everybody. In other words, they have to come to that to themselves, and I can make rational arguments for why you should feel sorry for other people, because it actually affects you and helps you to do that. But that's a whole other story.
Mhm.
But the thing is, you have to meet people where they are and say, yeah, while you have a right to laugh at black people or fat people or skinny people or gay people or whatever, don't act like you want to help them. Let's not pretend like you're out here acting like, oh, I've got the solution and I know how to help these people, when all you're really doing is just getting your rocks off on people.
Yeah, getting your rocks off and helping yourself.
Yeah, that's all they're really doing.
I want to go back to Blazing Saddle days.
Yeah. When people weren't so sensitive. That's why I was saying, in the meantime, and this is what I was trying to tell Katie, it's like, in the meantime, though, let's get stronger. Let's not rely on people to feel sorry for us. Let's not rely on people to understand us. Like, it'd be great if they did, and it's good that we're making moves and we're doing everything we can to educate people and stuff. But just understand that a lot of people aren't going to accept that.
Although I do feel that a lot of conservatives miss the point because I see them say, "Oh, we need to go back to the Blazing Saddles," and it's like, well, the director, his name escapes me. Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks, yeah.
The Jew who made that is making fun of the racists. It's like, if you're laughing at the fact that people are using the N-word, I think you missed the entire point there. If you think that the whole point was, he was able to say the N-word and I should be able to say the N-word, it's like,
it's a comedy. It's a comedy that mocks. It mocks. No. It's a comedy that mocks absurdity, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it's like, you people are really. This is why I love so much. I love getting in a pissing contest with certain groups online, even in person. But it's absolutely hilarious to watch them have meltdowns over the dumbest crap. And like, my friends that happen to be black, they love doing this too. And they're like, I'm gonna go and mess with some, NIMBYist liberal. And when they do, it is absolutely hilarious. It's like, you feel bad for me? I have my own business. I do a lot of da. You're the reason why when I go in, to get a business loan or a job, you're the reason why people wonder why I am here. Am I here for EEOC hire, or did I actually, am I an actual person and all that got to this point where I can do this?
It's like, well, to me, that's why it's important to have empathy for someone and not so much sympathy. It's like, if you realize there is a problem, it's like, okay, so society has had an issue with systemic racism since its foundation. What can I do to help to fix it? Not be like, oh, you poor thing. So that I can feel good about myself. Let me just, give you some money, and then you continue being poor. It's like,
yeah, it blows the mind. It really does. It really does. It's like, what am I? You're a whore? You're gonna buy me?
I'm
And,
easy, but I'm not cheap.
That's
And
right.
that's why I don't know if you guys see the left as including liberals, because as someone who's a socialist, it's like I don't even see liberals as on being the left, but that's, I guess, a whole different subject
I,
for
I look at
discussion.
words in their classical sense, so I get a little confused. Like a liberal would be a freedom person and all, but oh well. That's another thing that the left likes to do is twist the meaning of words.
I mean, like, I'm not going to get too deep into it, because to me, it's like labels are just labels. It's just, at least from my own understanding, though, it's like if you believe in some sort of form of capitalism, it's like, well, then you're technically on the right. In, at least in my eyes, it's like if you're, to me, it's like if you're advocating for some sort of a complete change in the current system, then that would make you more of a leftist. But to me, it's just,
Yeah,
if you think that a liberal is a leftist, it's like I'll disagree, but it's not a hill I'm going to die on, because it's like that's not really the important thing that's being discussed.
Yeah,
exactly.
most
The words
most
are too
liberals,
polluted right
Yeah,
now. We
most
just need to see people's actions.
hmm
right, most
exactly.
liberals I know are capitalists.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and like Bill Maher, for
classical
example,
liberals.
yeah, classical liberals, right? That's how they the term. More progressive people are for a more socialistic sort of system. Um,
Because their
if you
ideas
really
don't work.
well, and the other thing too is, maybe a socialist, at least really young socialist like my daughter or somebody like that, they will argue with me. They'll say, "Well, the reason we're socialists because I can't trust capitalists. I don't trust that they're really trying to help the world or help people. Capitalism is just a system. It's not. It doesn't have embedded in it some moral or ethical direction."
Mhm.
So her whole point, I guess, is people who use capitalism do it because they want to be on top of the hierarchy. And capitalism sort of relies on having hierarchies. You have to have a demand. And to have a demand means you have to have a group of people that have a lack. You have to sell something to someone. They have to need something from you. And the people who are selling things are on top, while the people who are demanding stuff are on the bottom. And so embedded in the system is this system of haves and have-nots. And so
Well,
therefore the evils of capitalism.
Mhm.
And then the arguments are, though, if you look at America, is a capitalistic society supposedly,
Mhm.
and yet
Yeah.
we're the most successful. Everybody's immigrating here, trying to fulfill their dreams here, rather than going to Switzerland or Netherlands or Germany or Cuba or whoever. They don't want to go there because they feel somehow that they won't make it what they want or whatever. But I don't know. I think capitalists make the same arguments against socialists. They're like, I don't trust socialists. I don't trust that socialists have my interests at heart. So I think they want the government to be on top, and they want us to be at their mercy to where they can do their racism or do their whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like nobody's trusting each other. But if you look at countries like Germany, well,
Mhm.
Germany is not a socialist country. It's sort of like a socio-democratic sort of thing, but
Social democracy.
social democracy. And yeah, and they use capitalism. So it's kind of hard to pigeonhole them.
right?
But
China,
maybe China, yeah, China's a
they're,
communist country.
but they're capitalists as all get out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which just goes to
So
show you
Show
how
you, right.
complex and nuanced this whole thing
All
is.
this whole
yeah,
thing is.
but
Yep.
the great thing, like if we actually lived as Americans, which hasn't happened in quite a few generations, it kind of goes back to your thing. There's not really a hierarchy in that unless you abuse it. Because you want a pen, I want your dollar. I'm not forcing you to do anything.
Right.
That was the whole thing about America. It was the freedom. You can choose. You couldn't choose to be a bum. And most people that immigrated to the U.S. back in the day got back on a steamship and went home because they couldn't hack it. And you have the freedom to do this, but you don't have the freedom to take other people's money and labor and everything else.
Mhm.
And, you know, and when you set people that free, that's when people take off like, you know, a Falcon 9 rocket.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people look at it in a practical way. They're like, well, there's always going to be a percentage of the society that's going to be living on the dole. Like, I think right now it's what 3% or 4% of people are totally on welfare, and
Was
they're
it
not productive.
half of white women in the United States are on welfare? I think is
Yep,
the statistic.
the statistic is most of them are white women. Yes,
Hmm.
and but there's always going to be this segment of society, this percentage that that falls into that. But for the most part, most people want to be successful or want to be productive. So, like for example, like I knew this guy in California when I was living there. He moved and he worked where I worked at, and he's like, "It's the worst thing I could have done was move to fucking California." He goes, because I was in Alaska, and Alaska was a capitalistic, more, you know, capitalistic sort of community or state or whatever, Republican, whatever the case is. But he said what I was is we also had UBI, universal basic income. And so everybody got $1,000 a month from the government. And he says, and what I did, because I was working, I had a job, a good job, but everybody got this extra $1,000. And even people that worked, people that didn't work. What we didn't have was the welfare like you do in California, you know, where certain people are given welfare under certain conditions. Everybody was given the $1,000 a month to do what they wanted with it, right?
That's the oil revenue.
So then, right. So then what the critics used to say, well, if you give everybody $1,000 a month, there's going to be no incentive to go to work and do anything. You're just going to create a whole class of people who are going to use the system and live off $1,000 a month. But actually, what really happened is people took that $1,000 and invested it in their own businesses. So all of a sudden, Alaska had a huge increase of personal business, private businesses started coming up. Like he himself, he said, I owned a computer store in Alaska, and it was very
Beautiful.
successful. He says, so I worked and I took that $1,000 and I just banked it away along with whatever else I could save, and I invested it in my own business. And you know, a lot of people did that. Now there was always that same percentage of people, but it was the same percentage all along. It didn't increase. The same people that were on welfare were the same people that were now trying to live off that $1,000 a month, which wasn't very successful either, because those people had to get part-time jobs to make, because 1,000 ain't enough. Like that ain't helping nobody.
Yeah.
But it will help you if you're an entrepreneur. Like if you want to use that money, and
Oh yeah,
you know what I
I can
mean?
use the
So
extra 12 G's a year.
yeah, and the state actually became a lot richer. Like the state, after they implemented the UBI, he was telling me that the state saved so much money from
It is.
doing welfare and stuff like that, which was way more expensive than just $1,000 a month for everybody. So actually, the whole state got richer, people got richer, everybody came up, you know, for the most part. But the intuition from the beginning was, well, if you do that, no one's going to want to work. Everybody just wants free money and shit like that.
Well,
So
yeah, and my take on it as a a leftist, just like there's going to be, no matter what system, whether it's private or a government program, it's like there's always going to be abuse, and we got to try to
Yes, sir.
cut
Bingo.
down on the abuse. But it's like, to me though, it's like if if we're looking at the abuse of, like, let's say there's someone on the welfare system who's just trying to gain, be a welfare queen, as some conservatives will say. Like, they're just like, but then there's on the other end of the spectrum, there's there's the billionaires gaining and abusing the system. And we can disagree on a number of things, but to me, like if your priority is to focus in on the welfare queen over the billionaire, it's like, to me, it's like the people in power are way more affecting the system in a more negative way than the person with no power. And so it's like, like I could put up with someone, who has, who doesn't have a job and is just trying to live off government money than someone who is actively, destroying people's ways of lives.
Yeah. I mean, I see the harm. But it's self-inflicted to a degree, but to a degree, not all the way.
Mhm.
People who are stuck on the dole, like they're stuck with like 5 kids. Even if they got a job, they couldn't make it. They're gonna have to really, rely on government assistance. I think the only way out is to get married. Find you a man or find you a woman, and you guys can work together as a team to get out of that situation. But this goes back to family values. This goes back to marriage being a good solution. Like people, and unfortunately, I think a lot of times marriage is a little unrealistic. And again, the system makes it that way. Like
Mhm.
I was married, but I have to pay $1,000 a month in child support,
Mhm.
while my ex-spouse doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
And relies on the kids to work and me to provide my $1,000 a month and all these other things. And so from why would I want to get married again? Like I lost my kids. I'm the only one that's got a job, yet I'm the one that doesn't have the kids. I'm the one that has to pay the price. Why? How is that fair?
Well, that oh, go ahead, Al.
No, you first.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, and I feel like we need to get away from this whole placing someone's entire worth on their job. Like, some
Right.
people just can't work. If you're a completely disabled person, you should be given enough money to
course.
thrive. And it's like, but it's like people don't see it that way. It's like my wife is one of those people. It's like, I can work, she can't, but she can't get disability because the system is just so broken.
You make too much. I know how that goes, but all right. that kind of argument, I hate that, but I agree with Scott on the system there, and all, because it's what it's doing is it's literally turning everybody into cattle for the government.
Mm-hmm.
But to Caleb's point, about working, I had something happen not too long ago, and let me put it this way: I couldn't get out of the bed, and it's very hard for a lot of people to get this point. I can understand there are true disabilities and all, but the majority of people just abuse it to the point where it's beyond absurd. I'm sitting here laying in bed with a laptop on, working. Laptop sitting on my stomach, and I had Scott, two of these people.
Mm-hmm.
And I need help. It's like, well, Uncle Al ain't rich no more. But it's like, I'll help you. My company's hiring. I'll get you a job. You sit on your ass with a laptop on your stomach. They'll pay you more than enough to get by. And they flat out refused. It's like, we can work from home now. We live in such a blessed society and a time. And it's like, for somebody that is pretty much crippled can still,
make it.
They could still make it.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is people don't. Well, here's the situation though too. Depends on what your skill levels are. Which again, all of this goes back to choices we make in life. Like I kick myself every day that I didn't make the right choices when I was a kid. I could have done so many things when I really look back on my life and I really measure
True.
my skill level. Like I know I could have become doing something a lot different than what I'm doing based on what I know about myself now. Now I know I really do have the capacity to learn certain things and do certain things that would have enriched me a lot more than it has. And I also know that I could have made better decisions in my personal life with women that I should have messed with and others that I should have just never messed with. But we all make these dumb decisions, right? And it's led us to where we are. So you can always say, well,
Right,
you
man.
can't really complain. You don't really, no one's going to feel sorry for you because of the decisions you decided to make. You made those decisions. Why is it our fault that you made these decisions? And so you could say the same thing with maybe a lady that's got like 3 kids or something. And if she gets a job, she's not going to be able to afford childcare and her bills and everything else all by herself. So
She should have picked a better woman or a better
right.
man.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Then you go back and you say, well, you should have made better decisions in your life. Well, that's easy to say in retrospect.
No.
But at the time, suppose you married someone or you got with a guy or a woman who was great, and then they misled you, and they actually turned out to be serial killer, or turned out to be irresponsible, or turned out to be, no good for you, and they left their family. Whose fault is that? Like, you gave this person, you opened your heart, you opened your home, you
Legs.
did all the right things. You tried to marry them like the society tells us we should do. You do all these things, but you can't control. You have no control of the other person. They may decide to be, well, now I'm a devil worshiper and I don't care. I'm going to go out and screw around on you and do whatever.
How often
I mean-
does that really happen?
Probably a lot, man, because in my experience,
Okay.
every woman I've ever had a relationship with has turned out to and I'm not blaming the woman, I'm blaming the dynamic. It didn't
Yeah.
work. And
Okay.
and I've seen this with everybody, my brother, my sister, friends, everybody. Most relationships just don't work out, man.
And
And
Why
you're
is
lucky.
that?
You're lucky if it does. You're lucky if it does.
Why is that?
In my opinion, I think it's because we live in a society where it's just easy to walk away. It's
Yeah.
not like the old days. In the old days, women were forced to stay with their men, no matter if they became drunks, if they became abusive, whatever the case is. A woman would not leave because where is she gonna go? She's a
Well-
woman. She can't earn the same amount of money. She can't make it on herself. She's gonna have the kids. Who's gonna take care of the kids? And the man don't want her to leave because maybe he'll get stuck with the kids, and then who's gonna take care of the kids while he's at work and stuff like that. So society was built in such a way that encouraged marriage to stay together. There was a social contract. There's like this social pressure. You didn't get divorced
You
for
had
whatever
to be
reason.
no. You had to be responsible in your marriages.
Well,
and
not
now you
necessarily.
don't- now
That's
you
what I'm
don't-
saying.
Now you
like,
don't have to be. Not that we're not
But-
going to be
No,
the
no, no.
outliers.
I'm
well,
saying
no,
that it can seem like that, but believe me, I have aunts and uncles and grandparents, and they came up in those days. Those men were all of my uncles, and all those guys are alcoholics. They beat their wives, every one of them. They did
Okay.
horrible things, and the women didn't leave, and they didn't leave their wives.
I'm
Not
saying
because
that's
not because they
justified.
were what I'm saying is not because they weren't responsible. They were responsible maybe in as far as staying married.
Probably
but-
more responsible.
Yeah, and well, it was practical for everybody involved to do that. So but they were
Okay.
irresponsible in the way that they treated their spouses. They were alcoholics, they could do whatever they wanted. Right?
Back in those
So now-
days, the men
well,
in the
now-
neighborhood would get together and whip their asses.
Sometimes, but not in my experience, or not in their experience. It was pretty much they had friends that all laughed about it. They'd go to the
Yeah.
bar and laugh about how they beat their wives up. But
Those are weirdos.
but
yeah,
But
ahead,
the
Caleb.
point
go
I'm
ahead.
getting at, though, is women have 2 choices now. they can turn a man into a walking ATM, or they can get married to the government.
Yeah, of course. That's
But so,
unfortunately what all that crap led to.
but
Go ahead, Caleb.
what I was trying to say is, though, is like with going back to my wife, though, it's like she was on a fast track to doing the thing that she loved. She got a bachelor's in anthropology.
Nice.
She was wanting to get her master's in archaeology. She planned on going to Europe to do that in one of the Scandinavian countries, and then just disability happened just like that out of nowhere and derailed her entire life. And
Exactly.
it's like, and to me, it's like that's people just want to look at the disabled as something lesser, ableists, and it's like, to me, that's a major issue that we're dealing with.
And it's hard. It's
but,
like hard for one person to take care of another, and even a family at that.
Yep.
And so, to me, it's like there's, a lot of people want to just be like, oh, it's your own fault for not, for making poor choices. But it's like a lot of times, though, it's for lack of a better term, acts of God. Just like things just happen, and you have no control over, of that thing happening to you.
Yeah,
Are you making the most of the situation, though?
I mean, yeah, but like going back to what you were saying, though, with like, to me, it's like where women only have this choice or that choice of like, being married to the government or staying within an abusive relationship. Like, to me, it's like, well, shouldn't we be making to where, like, to me, it's not there's a lot of men who think the biggest problem was that women were able to get jobs. It's like, no, that's the more choices that a woman can make, the better. Like, if she wants to be a homemaker, great. If she wants to focus on her career, great. Like, the issue, though, is that we have had stagnated wages for decades, where it's like they haven't kept up with the cost of living, or the cost, and the rise of inflation. And it's like, to me, it's like the fact that a single person shouldn't have to be married to someone else to make it in life. It's like, if someone wants to get married and double their income, great. But it's like, someone should be able to make a single income and be able to support themselves and thrive. It's like, and we when we can't do that. And it's like, and we obviously disagree on political issues, but it's like we can at least come to agreement on that. It's like, it's not what's happening right now is not working.
No, it's not. And like I said, it's if I'm going to keep harping on it, because I'm not a narco capitalist, but government. The government has given everybody an excuse. Well, I don't like the color of that couch that she bought. I want a divorce. It's like, no, just suck it up.
For me, it's not the issue is not government, but the issue can be government. The issue becomes when government no longer represents the people who are on the least of us, who are the poorest among us. It's like when you only care about giving what your billionaire donors want. It's like, well, of course the government's not going to work for the people. It's like you've basically just made it into an oligarchy. Like,
yeah, well, you're right.
Well, let's look at some test cases. Like, you can look at some examples in the world. Like, I can draw from Germany. Germany had a much bigger social net than America, right? Much more people were, it's a pretty progressive country. Let me put it that way. Marriage was very, very, everybody was married in Germany. Everybody was married. And now at the same time, everybody was getting social. So it didn't really cause a decline in the family structure. However, now I will say it did. Since 2019, it's been declining greatly. But this is because of cultural messaging. I think the social capital is effectively, creating this decline in marriage for whatever reason. We can talk about that, but as far as the government coming in and destroying marriage by putting people on the dole, that tends to happen in America, I think, because of the way that it's so focused, and also the culture in America. Like, if you think about it, all our music and entertainment, everything is focused around misogyny. It's focused around, denigrate. We're in a cultural decline. That's what I'm saying. I think it's more cultural, because we even started off fucked up. Like, even when marriages were commonplace in America, the men were abusing their wives. That was not even that controversial of a thing.
I mean, was it? I believe marital rape was not considered illegal on a federal level until 1991. So
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for all the religion we had, it didn't help. For all the fucking, talk about being responsible husbands, that didn't help. I mean, they made money because men want to make money anyways. They want families anyways. They want kids. They want heirs. They want property. They want land. They want something they can hand down to their generations. Every man wants that shit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, back then, they also wanted to drink their booze, stay out all night, fuck a lot of women, beat their women if they get out of line. And it was acceptable. It was okay.
You act like that was such a common thing.
I mean, it's a lot more common. I'm telling you, at least in the South, it was. I grew up in the deep South, and this was. But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I don't know what it was like in the middle class wherever you live, or
no.
California.
My family was, grandmother Georgia, upstate New York for my grandfather, and it's like, my grandfather said, "Yeah, oh boy, we'd find somebody that was fucking up, being a drunk or whatever.
But it's the same way now. But what I'm saying is not that it was more that way back then. I'm saying it's the same way now. The difference is
we have the internet, so we could see it.
Yeah, you see it all the time. And the other difference is women don't have to put up with that crap no more. Women can get their own jobs, or have the government take care of them, or do whatever. But it's the same thing. It's like, that's why I find it really hard to blame women when they're stuck in a situation where they're stuck with kids and they can't really work, stuff like that. I can kind of understand that. Not everybody, but I'm saying some women use it as a business.
Yes, they do. But who gets the choice in any kind of relationship nowadays?
That's
who
right.
gets the choice?
The women
That's
every time. And see, this is the thing that I think the solution is going to lie in more of a ground roots education. We're going to have to empower people to say, you know what, you don't need, marriage. This is what I was going back to marriage thing as an institution. It seems to be failing in our culture, because what does it really mean to be married in our culture? Is like asking for problems, because people have to, women, everybody can walk away anytime they want, and people know that they can get taken care of one way or the other. And so this whole marriage thing, and who's going to suffer at the end of the day? Unfortunately, it's, in my experience, it's the man that's going to have to be the one to pay the child support, lose the kids, lose the house, divide up the properties. So for a man, why would he want to get married in this society? It's just not geared that way. Now, if maybe in Thailand or in Japan or in Germany, maybe marriage is going to be just fine. It's okay. People are different, but that's because of the culture.
Yeah, this is what I keep saying. Our government is. I'm not a tinfoil hatter. You know that, Scott. But it's like, why is it that the institution that we built turns on us and just wants to, I don't know, basically destroy us. Not men only, but women, it's everything. And
Mhm.
it's like, a government is nothing but an idea. And
Mhm.
you can poof that thing out of existence real quick.
I feel like part of the issue is this myth that we've built up around hyper individuality. It's like,
Mm.
individualism is a good thing. It can be a good thing, but it's like we've become so isolated that it's like it's all becomes me and fuck you, and it's like a functioning society can't work like that. You know?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to the values of the church, like having a church community is really powerful. Like say like what Al was saying about the Mormons, they're really a very cohesive community and they all understand no man is an island and they can be there for each other. Even when I was a Jehovah Witness, part of the thing that kept me being a Jehovah Witness was the fact that I was when I was if I had money problems, people would come together and help me as a community and vice versa. I became a ministerial servant and then I was overseeing like helping families out that needed it. And so yeah, no man's really an island, but when we have this individuality, we sort of cut each other off from each other.
Yeah. I think we're too individualized at this point. And, I don't really want to blame social media because there's plenty of people that use it for good intentions, but it just, people have become like seriously cut off from each other.
Hmm.
Nobody gives a shit. And all
Nobody.
me. And it's like, you know what? You can't make the world a better place. You're not going to sit here your entire life and go without any downturns. And yeah, you have some institutions that highly promote it. Billionaire Zuckerberg, the government, you name it.
And that's the
But
thing. Like, you know, the I can I recognize that at least currently, and for a lot of people, the government just is not working for us, and for at least me, the solution is not to just get rid of the government, but it's like to I feel like we can elect people who actually represent our values or our interests, but it's like for whatever reason the people in power were able to convince the public that what you should do, you should vote in people who only care about what billionaires want, and somehow whatever the billionaires are doing, that's going to trickle down to you.
not really. But no, Caleb, I agree with you on that because, it's like the government can be bought. Who has the most money is going to get it.
Mhm.
And no,
Yeah.
I'm sure that works in other countries. Russia's a great example. The oligarchs there. But it's like, no, this is America. Damn it.
That's why Trump has got elected. That's why Trump won.
Yeah,
Um,
tear it down.
the people were tired of the establishment, and it could have been Bernie that won.
If
But the
only.
thing is, if only his own party wouldn't have thrown him overboard.
Yeah.
But the conservatives, at least they understood like the messaging was right. They were like, look, people are more populist. People are tired of having a government that's easily bought out and that it is simply at the mercy of the lobbyists and the donors class. And so they didn't get it, man. The Democrats were just missed it. They just missed the whole thing,
It's
man.
like they could have gone with Bernie, who actually spoke for the people, but instead they went with a billionaire who's going to fleece them, even though he speaks their language.
Don't tell anybody, but I was going to vote for Bernie.
I was too, man.
Your secret is safe with him.
Yeah, on open YouTube. But yeah, I hate to say this. I don't know if y'all are the same, but I could really give two nothings about politics. and all
Same here.
until
Oh, yeah.
2015. And then 2015 rolled around, and I mean, it's just nothing but politics. Every single one of my lefty friends, and all called me a Nazi, and I told them I'll fucking shoot you if you don't get out of here like a Nazi. And and you know, and it's just man, how the hell? And now all we did was focus on it the last 15 years, and it's just like, really. We solved the problem. We know what the problem is. It's the government, and
Well, it's the
and it's like
government plus big business. Yeah.
they're all intertwined now. You know, the big
Mhm.
three used to keep each other in check. There was the
Mhm.
government, business, and the media, and now they're all, just one entity.
Mhm.
And
Basically.
the media used to keep the government in check all the time, but yeah, and it's like I'm so happy that I hope it's over, but it seems like it's starting to be over, that now we can just get back to business, our lives, basically.
But if you listen to the left, if you listen, maybe even people in the center, they kind of see what's going on with the Trump administration as more of the same, only worse, because they see Elon Musk, who is one of the richest billionaires in the world, has some of the biggest businesses in the world, has an office in the White House, pretty much. Um,
What's he
he's
doing?
he's right there, and
What?
he's talking about cutting, and I'm supporting. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this is my opinion, but I'm saying that a lot of people look at that as more of the swamp. They look at it like, okay, so Trump is helping all his crony businessman friends on Wall Street capitalize off of their being intertwined with the government, because now Trump is a businessman and he's got all his little business
Yeah.
cronies in there with him, and now they're all kind of profiting off the backs of the taxpayer in the name of cutting government waste and fraud, and it's just a way to save more money so they can put money in their pocket and support their SpaceX stuff and Tesla and all this kind of stuff. That's why the left is out there burning Teslas and laughing at his spaceship blowing up over Florida and all of this kind of stuff. Like that's the whole problem. It's all
Yeah.
perspective. Everybody's looking at it in their own lens.
Yeah.
Like conservatives are like, oh, finally somebody's getting rid of the swamp, while the left is looking, God damn it, he's bringing an ocean in the
Yeah,
motherfucker.
yeah,
Come on.
to me it
We
doesn't
can't
make sense.
steal from people anymore.
It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to me that the people who are like, yeah, billionaires are bad, and they're taking advantage of the system. So let's put in a billionaire who is taking advantage of the system to fix the system somehow. Like that doesn't make sense to me. But
Well,
Yeah.
what is he actually doing? That's the whole question. I know he's Hitler and everything, because
I'm not going to say
working
he's
with
Hitler.
Trump, but
He has the potential to turn into a Hitler-like person. But I mean,
I'll
like
tell you
at the
what.
moment, he is
Do they do. You're right.
At the moment, the best description I can give Trump is a narcissist man-child.
Well, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Even Scott will agree
We
with
all
that.
know that. I think we all agree on that. See,
But I
see
mean, it's like, yeah, do they, like Elon? I can understand where people get this fear from him, because he's literally taken over like the main parts of life,
Mhm.
and all transportation, electric,
Space.
the space, the big things. And it's like, if that guy wants to flip the switch, oh boy.
Well, my
But
question is, why would, if he was really smart, then that's what he should do. If he's a really smart businessman and a capitalist, then why wouldn't he want to use the government to fund his space? Like, they use, NASA. Like, look,
because they're idiots. He doesn't
let,
want anything
right.
to do
Let
with it.
me, like, look, there's one thing that Neil deGrasse Tyson said that was very true. Neil deGrasse Tyson said, look, SpaceX is a great company, very innovative. They can land their spaceships in reverse. NASA couldn't do none of that. He's doing a lot of things NASA couldn't do. But what did NASA do? NASA went to the moon. NASA did a lot of things that SpaceX will never do because NASA had the funding from the government to do a lot of things. You need the government in order to do a lot of the things that NASA did. SpaceX doesn't have that advantage. That's why they've never done those type of things. Their sort of stuff is more compartmentalized. But now Elon is smart enough to get himself in the government to where now he can pull strings to get the government to actually support his company, SpaceX, so they can go to Mars and do these things he's talking about.
Yeah.
And
Where do they come
other
up
things.
with this?
Which is why I laugh at the thought of people saying, "Well, there's no conflict of interest when it comes to Elon." It's like, what?
Where do they come up with this stuff, Scott?
Where?
He did it
This-
on his own. He's got a damn, what is it, the Super Heavy. I wish they would have kept it the BFR, the big fucking rocket. But that thing's more powerful than a Saturn V.
Right. And no one takes that away from him. That's not the real point. The point is that he needs, if he wants to help his company even more,
He has the opportunity.
why wouldn't he take advantage of the government? Why wouldn't he do that? I would.
Right? Why is he trying to get rid of all this bullshit spinning? You know how much NASA spent on?
Well,
Do you know how
here's
much NASA spent on
but-
their latest moon rocket? I forget what it's called. And all, but yeah, $11 billion, and they've launched one time. Elon's sending these things up every month. What the hell does he want to do with those incompetent, wasteful?
Well, that's like asking, why did Obama start the National Waste Initiative back in what was it, 2011? He started the National Waste. He was actually trying to cut out. I would like to say more than Doge is actually pointing to, if I remember right. But I think we'll be generous and say maybe just about the same amount. He was trying to cut out the same waste and fraud, and he used to bring up how the government paid $50 billion for a country band to smear their logo all over different things to create like this message on environmental stuff. And he says, why are we paying billions of dollars for them to what is it, a banjo band or whatever?
Yeah,
he says we're cutting that crap out. And then he went through a list of all just like Doge is bringing up all these.
but what's the difference?
What's the difference? So no one cared when Obama did it, but people are caring.
But no one didn't do anything.
So the difference. Well, first of all, I feel like we need to address something where if we're going to agree that no man is an island, then we can't say that Elon did it all on his own.
Of course, I'm not saying that at all.
Elon's just a genius at getting things to work together.
I think that's a myth. Elon is not a genius, but that's a different discussion we can have. The main thing I wanted to get towards,
he's a genius personally, but organizing he's pretty good.
He made certain right decisions at the right time that led to.
He puts the right people in the right positions.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, based on how Twitter tanked and Tesla is tanking, I don't know, but we'll see. And getting back though to the differences between what other presidents have done and what Trump is doing and Elon is doing is that, at least from my understanding, is that Elon is, for some reason, he's not even like the head of any department. He's just classified as a special government employee,
consultant. Yeah.
And so it's like they can do this game and this song and dance of like, oh yeah, he's responsible, but not really. Whenever something happens, on top of that, it's like Doge is basically trying to dictate to other agencies when they don't have, when like the Constitution says that one government agency does not have the power to decide these certain things over another government agency. It's like, that's happening. And like the people that Elon has surrounded himself with seem to don't understand how like government programs work, like with the whole debacle of like why are there thousands of people on Social Security who are like 150 or 200 years old when there were like people who used to work for Social Security were like, oh, this is why that is, and it's like they. It's just,
So let me ask you a question. How much money do you think Elon Musk brought in from government funding alone? How much would you guess?
Wait, are you asking me or him?
Both of you guys, like how much would you think that Elon has
Like a
gotten
billion
from the
here,
government?
a billion there.
Wait, I know he's gotten some. I know he's gotten some contracts, for
Put
setting
a number.
stuff up.
If you had to put a number on it,
I don't know. I don't know. Shit, as much as they spend on rockets, I don't know. $2 billion? I don't know.
try 40.
Nice.
Try 40. And so if that's his game, to collect $40 billion in government funds, including millions loaned to Tesla when he was struggling, then him, having influence in the White House is only going to help that situation along. And it's rational.
else can do it?
It might not. It might. Some people may see this as unconstitutional, or it could be like a conflict of interest. But as a capitalist, it's the only rational thing you should do.
It's definitely immoral and
Who else
conflict
can
of
do it?
interest. But yeah, if you are a billionaire with all these pockets that get subsidized by the government, and now all of a sudden you are in the driver's seat due to the president, it's like of course you're going to take a hatchet to all these agencies and collect as much money as you can for yourself.
Right. So I mean,
is he actually doing that though?
Yes.
But how is that helping the American people? Like I don't.
You tell me. I don't think a lot of the spacecraft is necessary. To be honest with you, I don't really think at this point in time space is all that interesting. That's where all his contracts.
But regardless if space is interesting to the public or not, it's like a lot of our technology comes from other things like NASA. Like I'd have to look up the list of but yeah, there's like a giant list of things that we depend on that came from things that initially started in NASA.
A microwave oven and Velcro.
I mean, a list. I mean,
NASA didn't create it. It was contractors that created all that stuff. And all these contractors can't do diddly squat now. Boeing can't get a capsule to come home.
Right.
And all the other, I forget the other company, they can't get anything off the ground and going. You got Bezos's Blue Origin that can't do anything. NASA sent up a $11 billion rocket. And, and now it's like the only space company that works that's sending up military satellites and GPS replacements and all that. It's SpaceX.
But listen to what you just said. Military satellite. Like we should not be militarizing our satellites. Like the Trump wanting to destroy neutrality in space is not going to lead to anything good.
I'm agreeing with you on that. But
and remember,
Scott mentioned government contracts. Somebody's got to set them up. So he's like, well, hey, I can light that candle off.
I'm trying to make that money, man. And remember, Elon Musk invested $300 million to get President Trump elected. And he didn't do that for nothing. And isn't it kind of weird that now he's contracted with the FAA for his Starlink satellite? He's getting money from them. He's requested the Department of Transportation, what's his name? Whether the FAA decision regarding Starlink could be influenced to present more money.
That's all I worry about.
So now you got to ask yourself. Now, suppose Biden had I don't know, the guy from Facebook, the guy that runs Facebook or something.
Well, don't go with Zuckerberg, because Zuckerberg is just he will flip on a dime. People want to claim that he's liberal, but he's not. He's as soon as Trump became president, he kissed his ring. It's like, no, Oh,
Yeah,
let's
he's a
go with
chameleon.
Soros.
Bezos or Soros. Yes, Soros. So suppose Biden put Soros in the White House to do kind of the same thing, and he was getting all this money for government contracts and stuff like that. You would easily say this was socialism at work. This is how socialists do their shit. They stick together. They're corrupt. And they be rightly, the right would be right about that. They would be like I would support them in their criticism. But for some reason, when Elon does it, it's okay, and it's like, oh well, he's helping cut fraud and waste, and it's going to help or whatever. It's like, I just don't buy it, man. I think they're all in
Yeah.
it for themselves. They're
Es-
all in it
es-
for their own power, man.
Especially when we already have a system set up of the attorney generals their sole responsibility is to have audits every year and find waste and abuse, and it's like you didn't need this Doge, and this this outsider billionaire who just doesn't even do a proper audit. Like, it takes months to do an actual audit. And it's like, you're telling me you just found waste in days? Like, you're bullshitting me.
I have a prediction.
Not really.
I think the reason he did that was because they're trying to get more and more leverage and power. So what Trump is doing is he's going to get Elon to create this whole Doge cut fraud out real quick, so that next time on next election cycle, he's going to probably cut everybody a check. I guarantee he's going to do that. He's going to cut everybody a check. I don't know how much, but he's probably going to cut everybody a check. This is going to win support for that. And he's going to credit the Doge thing to that. And then that's going to get people to support for the next election cycle towards the Republicans again. And this is just going to reinforce the conservatives to be in power and keep this thing going. Because I'm telling you, this little check is small potatoes for them. But it's going to be a big deal for us, because we're going to say, hey, under Trump, all I know is when Trump was in office, he was putting money in my pocket, just like they did when last time with that COVID thing.
How's that? Yeah.
All I know is he put money in my pocket. So as long as that's the case, I'm going to keep on voting.
And the same thing is going to happen with the tax cuts. It's like,
exactly.
Last time Trump did the tax cuts, which was the only thing he really accomplished during his time in office the first time around, but it's like he threw the middle class a few bones, but to make it seem like he cared. But it's like the majority of those tax cuts went to his ultra wealthy friends, and it's just, and now he's just doing the same thing again.
And long term, yeah, go right ahead.
When did we get to this point where, I'm not even going to say belief, Scott, of all people, me, and when it comes to belief, but when did it get to a point where we just doubted everything?
Doubted everything? I mean, and what's trying to think of what? Yeah, like, I mean, I know there's been this movement of people wanting to doubt, like, our institutions, and like whether it be government, medical, or pretty much any expert. I know there's that. Is that what you're getting at?
No. Well, I guess I used the wrong word, everything, but it's like even if somebody does something good, and we have to think there's some ulterior motive behind it. Even though all the logic dots connect, did that equal good? Yes or no? But it's like, now everything is bad.
I don't trust him. I don't trust it. Yeah. My dad spoke on that. He was saying that back in the 50s and 60s, he said when the government said hide under the desk because of the nuclear shit, everybody did that. When the government says you can't trust the commies, you trusted that. When the government said this and that, take your vaccine, whatever,
all full of
everybody went right along with the program. But now when the government supports a vaccine or wants you to get get the jab or whatever, everybody's like, hell no, man. They're trying to fucking enslave us or put the devil's mark in our system or whatever, or they'll say that, any when they put out all these social programs, there's some catch to it, or whatever, man.
I mean, to answer that, I would just say that life isn't that black and white. I mean, it's like, does Al Capone giving out turkeys to poor people, magically excuse him for all of the mob crimes that he's done, or
Right.
Hitler being a supporter of animal rights? Like, okay, I mean, to me, it's like there's it's these small acts of virtue signaling that it's like, just because you're doing something good doesn't mean what you're overall doing is good. Like, for me, it's like, Carlin said it best when it's like, there's a big club, but you're not in it. And it's
That's
like,
right.
there's all these Trump supporters who think they're in the club, but it's like, you're not. And to me,
Right.
I've said this before, it's like his inauguration painted the perfect picture. It's like his diehard Trump supporters that actually care about him were out in the cold. And then you had his cabinet members inside the building, but even they didn't have the best seats. The people who had the best seats were the people who gave him hundreds of millions of dollars for his campaign. It's like, it's those billionaires who are in his club. And even them, since he's such a narcissist, it's like, at the end of the day, though, all he cares about is himself. It's like,
yeah, and on the left, people say the same thing. Like, Kamala Harris, when she did her little concert to support her campaign, she paid billions of dollars to Oprah Winfrey and all these rappers that are out there twerking and shit, and and then I don't know. I think everybody's in it for themselves, is what our society, the message that we're all getting. People don't even trust science anymore. You got Sabina Hassenfelder coming out. Don't trust science establishment. That's her big niche right now. And everybody's just, they don't
You're right,
trust.
because everybody could be bought. There is no integrity.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Science can be bought. I agree. Yeah, climate changes. It was 40 degrees this morning. Now it's 70. But all right. Who can we trust?
When I was in college in 1991, I had to do some sort of thesis on climate change back then, and everything I read was saying that by the year 1999, we're not going to have a Florida coast anymore. We're not going to have a California coast. Like, it was all this dire doom and gloom. That the ozone layer, there's a big hole in it right now, and climate's going to change. And then 1999 came and went, nothing happened. Then they came out and said that by 2012 the fucking shit's going to go to hell. That never happened. And it keeps getting pushed up. So I'm not saying climate change is a myth at all. I'm not saying that.
No.
And I'm not saying that it's not human driven. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just
Everything
saying
affects
that
everything else. So
you bring up a great point, Scott, which is like, because science, it's like, there's a conflicting narrative that people are told, and it's like, because we go through public school thinking, oh, science has this figured out, and so it's like, science has settled this. It's like, but then we go to when we learn about the bleeding edge of science, it's like, oh, science is wrong all the time. It's like, it's constantly updating itself. That's the amazing thing about science. But it's like, people don't like with the whole COVID thing. Like, I feel like the government really fucked up with.
They really did, man.
Like
Trump
because
was
it's
in
like
charge, too.
because it's like I mean, both administrations fucked up, but it's like, to me, it's like with Fauci, where he's like, oh, we, when it comes to the whole masks thing, at first, it's like they changed their minds, like, within a few times, within like a single month, and it's like, instead of communicating to like, oh, we found out this thing, so now we're thinking of that, we need to do this. It was just like, no, we're right, and then when they ended up being wrong, that just, erodes trust.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, and it's not to say that science is bad or they were bad for it or what. It's like, science is one of those. That's why you shouldn't politicize science. You can't make it a political thing. They don't belong together, I don't think.
No, there should be no government funding, and watch out for any kind of billionaires that are funding it. And because when they're doing that, it's pushing an agenda.
In a corruption. Yeah.
And science is like math. They try to get it as perfect as math, and it is. It's the closest measure to objective reality.
Like Sabina Hassenfelder, you know, she says, you know, she goes, I wish they would stop funding science. She goes, and I know that sounds weird coming from a science and who has an academic background. I work in academia. She goes, but I'll just be honest with you. A lot of the pop science that we see in the reason that's out there is because these departments get funded lots of money, and these people have families, they have kids to feed, and they want to keep their tenure, they want to keep their, you know, position. And so, yeah, while string theory hasn't proven or demonstrated one thing in the last 40 years, it's still one of the most highly funded departments in high particle physics right now, because they get all the funding, yet they have no hypothesis, not one that did anything. The same with the multiverse guy, that whole thing. They fund his ass a lot of money. Sean Carroll and his team get a lot of money, but they have demonstrated not one success.
Yeah, how is it useful? Theories. How is it useful?
Right,
it's not. Okay,
and Sabina Hassenfelder's mad about
that. Funded to masturbate over something that is useless. Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the only warning I would give off that though is like sometimes the things that appear to be not going anywhere will produce results, and so it's like I'd say we, you know, it's one of those things. I'm trying to think of like a good example because it's like there was something recently that came up that I can't think of it at the moment.
I think cigarettes is a good example, because for years, you know, people were saying that cigarettes cause cancer, and that was laughed at, and it took years and years and years and years before finally they got one test case come back that was conclusive about that showed a correlation between nicotine and cancer. And
the Nazis of all people that discovered it.
And one guy that came on with Sabina Hassenfelder for an interview, I think it was in some kind of debate, and he was like, Sabina, you're so anti-science establishment, but what you don't understand is even if it takes us 50 years, even if we learn one thing that it doesn't work, or even if we have one success out of those years, that's progress. That made it worth it to do it or whatever. And people can disagree, but that was his point, is that sometimes science, that's the nature of science. It isn't like something that's going to happen overnight. It takes a lot of research and, you know.
How many times did you guys fail at an experiment in science class in, I guess, high school?
All
Thank
the time.
you.
Yeah.
All the time. But it was fun.
It was fun, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I can understand that, you know, but it's like, use the money wisely and everything. And it's like, no, you don't want 16-year-old Al, you know, doing organic chemistry at this point. No, but it's So I don't know.
Because I don't know. It's like another good example is like the whole like our use of lead, which, you know, that was a giant cover up. You know, like
lead
is it was the one scientist who found out how old the Earth was with
carbon dating. Was that
I think it was carbon dating, and how the uranium turned into lead. I think it was, and then so it's like from that one discovery, he realized how dangerous, you know, lead was for the public. But then all the lead companies and big business tried to silence him. But they weren't able to.
It's amazing what money can buy, isn't it?
So like I remember back in 2005, right? Here's a funny example of how people can get in their camps, and even scientists, and scientists can be very tribal. So like, we understand like dinosaurs lived like millions of years ago, right?
Yeah.
So you'd never think that you would find blood of dinosaurs, existing. I mean, blood is gonna go away, pretty quick,
Mhm.
So you wouldn't
Organic
think that you're
material.
gonna find right. So
Yeah.
back in 2005, this lady named Mary Schweitzer, she was a paleontologist up there in North Carolina, and what she did, she made a groundbreaking discovery of red blood cells and pliable blood vessels inside of a 60-million-year-old Tyrannosaurus Rex femur.
Mhm.
And so she went and published her work. And of course, all the creationist scientists got on board and were like, see, this shows they can't be millions of years old or whatever. And so because of that, all the other scientists, the community went against her. And she didn't get funding anymore. She got ostracized. She got laughed at. And she kept pushing through and pushing through. Then they found out that, there's a reason for the discovery. The preservation of the soft tissue in the dinosaur fossils was due to the presence of iron and hemoglobin, which can promote cross-linking and prevent degradation of proteins.
Mhm.
So we learned something. But instead of just taking the evidence and trying to find out what's the truth, scientists in the community stopped funding her, ostracized her, kicked her out, tried to fire her, demonized her
Uh,
because it went against the grain instead of
yeah.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just be like the Christians and yell blasphemy?
right.
Or another great example is they assassinated or murdered the guy who said, "Hey, maybe we should start washing our hands."
Oh, I
Right.
remember hearing
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
It turns
It's like,
out he was
yeah,
right.
he was a OBGYN, and like these babies were kicking off and on. He's like, man, I gotta see if we could do anything about this mortality rate. Oh, wash your hands.
Yeah.
What a novel concept. I was back then, but
But
Man,
hell,
so
people today probably don't
What-
even wash their hands.
But what gives me hope, though, is of all these examples we're bringing up, is though like the truth, at least in science, always eventually bubbles up to the surface.
right. But
Yeah.
do you realize she had to really stick to her guns?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
she really had to, because think about it. Suppose she would have just rolled over and said, you know what, I still need my salary and my money, so I'm just going to back off. Think about how many times that might have really happened in life.
Yeah,
That we could have learned so
that's
much
true.
more. But
that's a good
because
woman. She had integrity.
she had integrity, she said, I'm standing up for what I know is true. And I did see blood cells in those fossils, and I'm not going to sit there and just, but they finally found out what the real reason was for why it was preserved, and we learned something new. And now she should be looked at as a hero. Of course, she died. She passed away, unfortunately.
Well, she's a hero in her line of study. So,
Yep.
it's like artists. Most of the good artists died before they became famous, and
Yeah.
their legacy lives on. And
So
what about I don't know. Like a lot of these things, are they really useful?
like what? Like an example.
There were some years ago, and I think one of the guys are still around, Steve something or another. He was really popular. But yeah, they'd get into these arguments about the dinosaurs and all this stuff, and it's like, I'm glad that's putting bread on your table, but it's like, I don't really care about 1,000,000-year-old dead lizards. Well, they're birds. I don't care.
It helps the economy, man. Think about it. They're making money so that they can go out and buy stuff. and it circulates the American dollar.
Okay, so it's like circus performers. Okay, fine.
Yeah. I'm just saying it could be a lot more useful if people wouldn't be so tribalistic in their
Well,
attitude.
that leads into the rotating economy, I guess.
Yeah. There's a place for bullshit. Like, you think about these people who, and it kills me how people say, "Oh, focusing on life out in the universe or UFOs or whatever, that's just what a waste of time for scientists to worry about." Or they'll make the argument, why would aliens be interested in us? Why would they come here and be interested in us as scientists? Why would an alien be interested in us if they're so far ahead of us? And so that can't be true. But do you realize that you have people who dedicate their whole lives to studying the mating habits of roaches or certain species of ants in
This
the
is why aliens
African?
won't contact us.
It's like, it's so relative, There's people that do a lot of things we think is a waste of time, like studying ant larvae or studying insects or whatever, birds. Who cares? Who gives a shit? But, these things exist. People say, why should we even worry about going to Mars? What the hell do we need to be doing that for? If we can terraform Mars, then we can terraform the Earth. Probably a lot cheaper than sending billions of people over to Mars for what?
One would think. I had a brain fart with somebody earlier today. I first got up and they were talking about space, and I was like, do you realize that is the most inhospitable place ever?
Yeah.
That everybody's, well, the universe is this, that, and that. It's chaos, it's order. Like, well, it's not ordered for us. We got to take our environment and everything with us.
And since we now have a patent for EM drives, shouldn't we put more of our focus, instead of on combustion engines to get to different planets, shouldn't we now focus on, interdimensional travel, or, faster than light travel, or EM, devices that can tunnel through space? Like, it seems like that's old-fashioned technology in the next 20 years, combustion engines to get to Mars or whatever.
You could be like the Bajorans and put up a solar sail.
Yeah, solar cells. There's all kinds of different things you could maybe put the money to. I don't know.
I don't know. I'd like to focus on things that are, where the money's going to be best spent on us and our future. Our kids and all that.
Well, here's an argument. Here's an argument. People said spending all that money on space shuttle, going up to space, was just a waste of money. How is that really helping people on Earth? But then out of that, we came up with titanium. We came up with all kinds of materials that help us in different ways. So I think the argument is, like, while on the short, we may be like a short-term view rather than a long-term view. Like, somebody say, why waste so much money in war in building? A lot of inventions and innovations come out of wars and come out of, space travel and underwater travel. That's the argument.
I've heard that, before. It kind of boils down to a demand for a need.
Yeah.
Did we need aircraft? I mean, everybody hates flying nowadays. I tell you what, I don't want to go to Europe on a plane. I'd rather get on a boat for a week in a nice cruise line and, kick back and relax. I'm tall. I can't be on a plane.
But without planes, if we didn't have planes, then Russia would kill our ass. China would destroy us. A lot of this has to do with protection from other countries. Like, we're on a technological race to defend ourselves,
Yeah, it was like one of those snowball effects. Everything. It's like, well, we could look back at the past and say, no, we should have done things differently. But this is the world we live in, so unfortunately, we have to have nukes pointed at certain countries.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
but there's other things that we can do, to make our lives better. And like, we're talking about how the government impedes things. And Scott, you're aware of where I moved to, but
Oklahoma.
no, hell no, man. I'm in the mountains now.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I got the hell out of that state, and it's
Good.
I can't believe this. I can't sell things to you two or anybody else without a government stamp on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no kidding.
Damn.
I mean, I'm not going to use myself as a thing or government. Can you just please leave us alone?
Well,
But
I mean,
it's
so
a beautiful it's a beautiful thing seeing the people around here. They don't give a shit about politics. They don't give a damn about anything. And it's weird not going out of your door and screaming "fuck" all the time
Yeah.
and all. But it took me about 4 months to adjust to it. And it's like, no, they're just like, you know what? Nothing we could control about that garbage. And you know what? Nothing changed when Biden was in office.
Right.
Nothing changed with Trump in the office before that. You let the idiots argue. We're just gonna make our turns where we have to and keep going on about life.
I mean,
So,
I just wish that people would know the difference between transgender mice and transgenetic mice.
Right. Yeah, because they're making a big deal about that. They're lying.
transgender, what? Genetics, and then what?
So Trump posted something about scientists wasting people's money on transgender mice, and it's like first of all, there's just no such thing. They're studying genetic mice. It's like, which is an actual something. Yeah.
Doge
Okay.
needs to cut out that.
That'd
So
be nice.
yes, so the right, yeah, they're making all these memes, or actually Elon is saying they spent millions of dollars studying transgender mice, and he just
God.
misread it. It wasn't transgender mice; it was transgenic mice. They were doing genetic studies.
Yeah.
Well, I've been doing that for years, Elon.
Yeah.
I mean, was it useful? I guess maybe one day we'll find out. But
Yeah,
transgender mice, that ought to be interesting.
I'm for it, man.
What kind of weirdo came up with that shit?
Well, I mean, you don't want your mice killing themselves.
Yeah.
Well, then don't do it like that old mouse
They'll
experiment.
off themselves.
What was the socialist experiment on the mice, and they all went insane and queer or something?
Yeah. Anything you want to say, Caleb? I'm about to bounce out here in a minute.
I mean, yeah, we've been speaking for just about 4 hours now.
4 hours, man. Yeah.
All right,
Going at it.
I guess
Yeah, man. Cool. I think we've got it off our chest, man.
Cool.
All right.
Scott, I'll message you a topic.
All right, brother.
Y'all have a good one. Good meeting you, Caleb.
Nice meeting you too.
All right, guys, I'm gonna get on out of here. Y'all like and subscribe, man, so we can do some more content. I want to get some, maybe even pay some folks to come on and debate, because I can't get debate people to show up. So I need to get some high quality debaters, man.
Get Ben Shapiro on.
Oh, I'd love that. I'd love to get all these guys, man. Shit. Hell yeah. All right, man. I'm gonna head on out, brother.
Same. See you.
All right. See y'all. Bye-bye.